they become detached, contemptuous, dismissive, and impatient. Why? Because then you start to take. When you have nothing left to give, any hint of attention that you receive is a burden on the narcissist and psychopath. Now they have nothing to take from you, but they still have to give you. And they don't like this. They resent this, and the narcissist even devalues you. You become a taker, and a user, and an exploiter. In the narcissist's mind, they have no memory. Narcissists and psychopaths are discontinuous, they're dissociated. They have no memory. You don't have credit with the narcissist and psychopath for your past performance. You know, you may have given the narcissist all your money, but then when you ask him back for $10, he's gonna frown, he's gonna sulk, and he's gonna tell you that you're exploiting him. You've given the psychopath all your love, and then you're sick for a while, and you need him to, attend to you. He's gonna resent this. He's gonna accuse you of taking advantage of it. Because there's no credit. There's no credit. Because there's no memory, no continuity, and no core identity. There's nobody there. There's nobody there to recall how kind you have been, how giving you have been, how forthcoming and outgoing you have been, and how much you loved the narcissist and the psychopath to the point of self-sacrifice. This means nothing, because it's soon forgotten. Narcissists and psychopaths reside in the present. They inhabit the present. They have no past, and they have no future. That's why narcissists and psychopaths act crazily and dangerously, because they don't anticipate the consequences of their misconduct, bad choices, wrong decisions. They don't have a future, and they don't have a past. And so who are you? Who are you? Suddenly materializing, like ectoplasm, in this room, asking me for anything. What right do you have to ask the narcissist for anything? What gave you? Why do you think the psychopath has an obligation to cater to your needs? What? You've done this for them in the past. The past is past. What can you do for them now? Nothing? Go away. Stop bothering the narcissist and psychopath. You're a stalker. You're crazy. You're insane. And so on. Both the narcissist and the psychopath use the shared fantasy. Borderlines do too. Shared fantasy is a cluster B feature. Shared fantasy is a narrative that includes you and assigns a role to you. It's kind of a role-play thing. And it leads to control, mind control, and behavioral control. But there's an important difference. The narcissist is delusional. He believes that the fantasy is real, and he coerces you to accept its reality, and he punishes you if you don't. This is what I call coercive snapshotting. The psychopath designs a fantasy for you, but he knows it's a fantasy. He has intact reality testing. He's just using the fantasy to manipulate you. He is being scheming. He is being manipulative. He knows that you crave for a fantasy, so he offers one to you. Whereas the narcissist deceives himself as well as you. The psychopath is at all times fully aware of what's happening, and he's simply exploiting you to the hilt. Period. No conscience there. The narcissist's shared fantasy, by the way, can revolve around giving. The narcissist harvests narcissistic supply by giving, or by making himself available, accessible, or even prey, even the victim. The narcissist's locus of grandiosity can be focused on pro-social, communal, altruistic, and charitable acts. The narcissist can love you back. By whatever the narcissist does, he does it ostentatiously, visibly, conspicuously, and he expects in return narcissistic supply. So the narcissist's giving is conditional. It's not really giving, and it's minimal, the minimum needed to garner supply. Because the narcissist engages in intermittent reinforcement, hot and cold, I love you, I hate you, come here, go hither, go thither, go away. Even the slightest giving, the most basic sign of kindness, are considered a big deal by the long-suffering intimate partner. The psychopath is incapable of even this. Psychopaths never give, period, because they have no need for narcissistic supply. They never reciprocate. They have no emotions, no empathy, no conscience. They don't need you. They don't need your praise. They don't need your approbation and approval. They don't need anything from you except what they want from you. So they create a shared fantasy as a means to an end, as a manipulative device, an environment. But even within the shared fantasy, they never ever give. They never make themselves available or accessible indefinitely. They never agree to play the role of the victim. They couldn't care less about what other people have to say. They want to end up with the money, with the sex, with the power, with the access, with the luxury life, with the contacts, with something. That's what they want. Having attained their goal, you're done. Your history. You're nobody. You're a nuisance and an annoyance. You've served your purpose. Go away. The narcissist is not the same. The narcissist has more commitment and investment in the relationship via the mechanism, the shared fantasy. But even the narcissist insists on taking, even when he's giving. Even the narcissist giving is a form of taking, because it's conditioned, and it's revocable. If the narcissist does not receive narcissistic supply, his giving stops, ceases. Suddenly, he's not available, he's not accessible, he's not loving, he's not open to collaboration, he's not giving, etc. Both the narcissist and the psychopath use you, exploit you, take from you, infinitely, indefinitely, as much as they can, until you're depleted and exhausted and withered and shriveled and have nothing more to give. And then they walk away. Then they walk away. The difference is the psychopath walks away, period. The narcissist gives you a second chance. You adulate and admire him as the great, altruistic, charitable giver. If you blow this second chance up, he's gone as swiftly, as cruelly, and as determinedly as his psychopath brother. Okay, Ishvan Panim. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to proceed each and every long video with a bullet points summary. You can watch the summary, it's usually between 5 to 10 minutes, and ignore the rest of the video. It will break my heart, but hey, I'm a narcissist. I deserve it. Here's your chance to break a narcissist's heart. Okay, Shoshanim. So now, the bullet points summary and innovation on this channel, followed by the longer presentation, deeper examples, and so on and so forth. You can skip the second part, because the first part captures all the information in the second part without the examples. Narcissists always claim to be victims, and they do so convincingly, because they're charming, they're attractive, they have thespian skills, they know how to act, they're convincing, they have cold empathy, they can scan you, know which buttons to push, they're manipulative, etc., etc. And so their claims to victimhood sound very true and very, very plausible. They persuade people that they're victims. Codependents and people pleasers use two techniques to manipulate other people. One technique is known as control from the bottom. I'm helpless without you. I need you. This is a form of manipulation, and it's control from the bottom, control through submissiveness. The second technique used by codependents and people pleasers is victimhood. I'm a victim. I'm entitled to special treatment, special consideration, and your constant sensitivity and vigilance to not hurt me again. So, but narcissists use these techniques as well. It's very difficult to tell apart narcissists from real victims, narcissists from codependents, and narcissists from people pleasers. Many narcissists claim to have been victims of narcissistic abuse, to have been discarded cruelly, to have been devalued unjustly. These claims are made both by real victims and by narcissists who hijack the narrative, mimic the victims, and essentially snatch the whole scene. So how to tell which is the real victim and which is the narcissist? Number one, splitting. Narcissists, exactly like borderlines, split. Splitting is an infantile defense mechanism which says, I'm all good, everyone else is all bad. It's also known as dichotomous thinking. There's nothing wrong with me. I have done nothing wrong. I am a kind, empathic, nice, loving, caring person, compassionate, helpful, attentive, yet I'm constantly being taken advantage of, abused, because people out there are bad. I'm all good. They, wherever they may be, all bad. This is splitting. Splitting defense is used only by narcissists and borderlines. Real victims do not split. Even people pleasers and codependents do not split. Splitting is a prime red alert, prime warning sign if you're dealing with a narcissist. Listen to what the narcissist says and ask yourself, is he constantly presenting himself as essentially all good, while everyone else is taking advantage of him, harming him, hurting him, etc. So this is splitting. Number two, non-discrimination. The narcissist would blame whole populations. He would say, for example, all my girlfriends betrayed me and hurt me and abused me and cheated on me. Or my spouses, or my business partners have victimized me, stolen from me, took advantage of me, etc. So the narcissist would generalize. He would generalize to populations. Generalization is a fallacy, is a kind of mental health issue, and it is dealt with in cognitive behavior therapy. So narcissists generalize. Narcissists wouldn't say, well, this girlfriend was really bad, but this girlfriend was great. Narcissists would say, my girlfriends, as if they all belong to a club or a political party together. You know, my girlfriends did this to me, my business partners did this to me. He would generalize about groups of people, and he would then go on to place himself as the victim of these people. Only narcissists do that. Victims are much more nuanced. Number three, self-pity. Narcissists, and especially covert narcissists, pity themselves. And they pity themselves visibly, publicly, ostentatiously, conspicuously. It's a currency. Their self-pity is a manipulative ploy to pull at your heartstrings. And so, the self-pity and the ostentation that goes with the self-pity, they are coupled with goal orientation. The narcissist wants something from you. If he is on YouTube, he wants your views and the advertising money. Otherwise, he wants to become a celebrity. He wants to have sex with you. He wants to take money from you. He will pose as a victim, a helpless, hapless, innocent, totally innocent victim, just to get you to do what he wants. It's manipulative. Remember, a true victim, a real victim, would never wallow in self-pity in public at least. He would never do this, and he would never ever couple self-pity with some goal. He would never go on YouTube and pity himself. Next, alloplastic defenses and an external locus of control. A narcissist would blame others for all the misfortune in his life, all his failures, all his defeats, and all the bad turns. It's never his fault. He is never in the wrong. There's an external locus of control. He's just there, passive, inert object, the recipient of other people's malice and mental illness. He is a victim by virtue of existing. There's no responsibility or blame. He never assumes responsibility or blame. It is a defense against shame and guilt, which in the narcissist's case are life-threatening. But still, it's there. So if you watch someone online, you talk to someone, and they keep saying, this was not my fault. I have been a victim. I'm not responsible. I've been abused. I've been taken advantage of. I've been discarded cruelly. I have been shamed. I contributed nothing to my predicament. I am perfect. I'm an angel. Well, that's a narcissist. Many of them are called empaths. Next is denial of misconduct or proportionality of response. The narcissist would do the most horrible things. He would steal your work. He would sleep with your wife or girlfriend. He would forge documents. He would lie to your face. He would go behind your back. He would backstab you. He would badmouth. He would do the most incredibly immoral and in many cases illegal things. And yet, he would deny them. In the face of hard evidence, he would still deny his misbehavior or misconduct. He would try to reframe it perhaps as justifiable because he is on a moral crusade or cosmos. He would invent a narrative that would convert the misconduct into proper conduct, moral conduct, laudable and commendable conduct, etc. But it would still be misconduct. A narcissist will also contest the proportionality of the response. A narcissist may say, yeah, well, I have done it, I have done this, but I think the response was out of all proportion. I didn't deserve this. I've been victimized. It's wrong what the other party did to me. I have wronged the other party in maybe, it's debatable, I don't think so, but maybe. But in any case, the other party's reaction was out of bounds and totally insane and unjustified, and I've been discriminated against, and I've been maltreated, and it's horrible what's been done to me. Totally ignoring, neglecting, and denying. What had triggered this cascade of events? The original sin, the primal sin, the narcissist misconduct or misbehavior. The narcissist engages in grandiose, ostentatious morality. He's a hero, he's a rescuer, he's a savior, he's a healer, he's a fixer. Whatever he does, even if it's patently immoral and possibly criminal and illegal, whatever he may do, whatever he does, it's all in the name of ethics and morality and religion and the greater good. He is selfless. He's not doing any of this for himself, God forbid. It's not about revenge. It's not about some lowly instinct of drive. No way, no siree. He is pro-social. He is communal. Anyone who comes with these BS stories is a narcissist. A narcissist would also try to explain his misconduct and misbehavior in terms of, I have been baited, I have been tempted, I have been entrapped, I have been seduced, I have been coerced, I have been brainwashed and entrained, I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't recognize myself, I broke my own principles and boundaries, he made me, someone made me do it, he made me do it, the victimizer, the abuser made me do it. Anyone who resorts to these idiotic excuses is a narcissist. Next, the narcissist never apologizes, never assumes responsibility, never acknowledges guilt, never tries to make amends, never agrees to discuss even the outstanding issues, never provides closure. Real victims do. And finally, automatism. The narcissist is on autopilot. He never reflects on his behavior, he never analyzes it, he never synthesizes his lessons. He's not introspective. He's incapable of seeing himself. He sees only others, and only in a way which is self-justifying and conducive to ego synchrony. The narcissist engages in automatism, because automatism, being on autopilot, prevents him from introspection, allows him to not engage in any soul searching. So narcissists would react automatically. They have stock phrases, they have regular sentences, they have habitual words and behaviors, and they would go through them as if they were robots, badly programmed robots. Many of you know such people. They're online, as self-styled experts, as coaches, as victims, as empaths. They're offline, as your colleagues, as your friends, as your girlfriends or boyfriends or spouses, intimate partners. They're all over. I've just given you the tools to tell apart narcissists from real victims. Real victims occupy reality. They are alert and aware of nuances. They have dignity. They seek resolution and real solutions. They accept responsibility for their contributions to their own predicament. They learn lessons. They modify their behaviors. They grow. They evolve. They learn. Perhaps the best sign that someone is a narcissist is that the same thing keeps happening to him, time and again. It's as if the narcissist has learned nothing from previous replays, identical replays, of the same cloned events. A narcissist who goes online and says, I have had 3 girlfriends and they all did this to me. Well, it means you're incapable of learning, you're incapable of growth, you're incapable of evolution and personal development. And this is typical only of narcissists, never of real victims. Remember this and apply this from now on to all your interactions with everyone around you. And now, to the more detailed presentation, replete with examples. Here is something to boggle your mind. Every narcissist, overt, dead or alive, claimed to have been a victim, or at the very least, to have been victimized, discriminated against, framed, set up, treated unjustly, abrasively, harshly. Every narcissist says this, no exception. How on earth can we tell the difference between narcissists posing as victims and real victims? Now, mind you, here's the problem. Narcissists truly and honestly perceive themselves as victims. They're not acting, they're not lying, they're not gaslighting, they're not faking. They truly, honestly, profoundly, deeply, irrevocably, and you know that I can continue for another half an hour, firmly believe their own confabulation, their own narrative, their own fantasy, their own storyline, in which they are the hapless victims of malevolent, malicious, dark, malign, evil forces out there. So how can you tell the difference? I'm going to teach you a few ways. These are kind of tests to tell apart a real victim from a narcissist who believes himself to be a victim. Now, of course, when I say he, it's a she, when I say him, it's a her, etc., etc. Half of all narcissists nowadays are women. Women's lib, equality is upon us. And for those of you who are lucky enough, fortunate enough to not know who I am, my name is Sam Batman. I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love and Narcissism Revisited. I am a former visiting professor of psychology and a current member of the faculty of SIAPS. So, let's delve right into the quagmire and swamp of victim. Narcissists always claim to be victims, and they're very convincing. They're charming, they're outgoing, they put on a facade of compassion and affection and empathy and so on, and you buy into their stories. Many of them pose as codependents, as victims of narcissistic abuse, as victims of generalized abuse, as post-traumatic people in the throes of post-trauma. Many of them go online and kind of merchandise their victimhood. Many of them compete, so there's a phenomenon of competitive victimhood. And many of them are so convincing that this has become their identity, their badge of honor. They are the perennial, well-known, famous victims, and that's how they're judged, even though a substantial minority, perhaps even a majority, are actually narcissists, and especially covert narcissists, but not only. How to tell which is which? Here are a few tests. Number 1, splitting. A narcissist would engage in splitting, which is a primitive, infantile defense mechanism. Splitting says, I'm all good, they are all bad. I've never done anything wrong. I've been wrong all my life. Having introspected, having interrogated myself, having soul searched, I discovered that I am blemishless. I'm flawless. I am 100% on the high moral ground. There's nothing wrong with me, and I've never done anything wrong to anyone. This all or nothing, black or white, all good, all bad, all angels, all demons, this kind of thinking is known as splitting or dichotomous thinking, and it is typical only of narcissists. Real victims don't have this. So many of the so-called empaths, of coaches who pretend to be codependents and victims, of self-styled experts who claim to have been victims of narcissistic abuse, many of these people are actually narcissists because they engage ostentatiously, conspicuously, visibly, and publicly in massive acts of splitting. Only narcissists split, remember that. Victims never do. Real victims have a much more nuanced perception of reality. They're much more attuned to the grey zone, to the grey area between the black and the white, to the fact that people are not all bad and never all good, that life is a complicated proposition, that things happen, even to the best of people. So, real victims have a much more realistic grasp of the process that had led to their victimization. As I said, much more nuanced. Not so with narcissists. Second test, non-discrimination. Non-discrimination is simply, every girlfriend I've ever had has betrayed me, abused me, destroyed me, abandoned me, cheated on me, killed me and my dog. Every girlfriend. There has never been a single exception. All of them, no exception, have done this to poor me. And by the way, the element of self-pity is a warning sign. If you spot self-pity, that's a narcissist. Victims have dignity. Victims don't pity themselves. They're angry sometimes, but self-pity is a hallmark of a narcissist, especially a covert narcissist. Overt narcissists don't engage in self-pity, but coverts do. So there is this self-pitying tone, you know? All my girlfriends were horrible to me. All my spouses, all my business partners, they victimized me, they discarded me, they treated me harshly, I was so good to them, I gave them everything, I gave them love, I gave them money, I gave them sex, I gave them this, and they just keep victimizing me. Everyone keeps victimizing me. For me, please, I'm so in need of compassion and empathy and so on and so forth. It's a manipulative technique, a narcissistic manipulative technique. Beware. If you see anyone whose narrative, whose story is that everyone in his life has victimized him, everyone, and that he has done nothing to deserve this, and he self-pities and shares this self-pity with you, but in a setting where there are certain positive outcomes, certain goals. So for example, a narcissist would share his story with you because it gets him views on YouTube. Or he would share this story with you because it would make him some money. Or he would share this story of victimization and self-pity with you because it would get him laid. It would get him to have sex. So narcissists, exactly like psychopaths in this sense, are goal-oriented. Non-discrimination goes hand in hand with goal orientation. You see something like that? Be very, very, very suspicious. Do not give the benefit of the doubt. It's 99.9% a narcissist. Next, alloplastic defenses. It's everybody else's fault, never mine. None of this is my fault. Everything that has ever happened to me is not my fault. I'm a poor victim. I'm a poor codependent. I am a lamb. I didn't see it coming. I'm so innocent and pure of heart. I'm so giving and so caring and so amazing and so loving and so this and so compassionate and so empathic and so warm-blooded and so I don't know what. And you see what they're doing to me? You see, none of it is my fault. I'm not responsible. I contributed nothing to my repeated predicament. Nothing. This is called alloplastic defense. Alloplastic defense is when you keep blaming others all the time, even when you have misbehaved egregiously. Even when your misconduct screams to high heaven, it's still never ever your fault. You wanna figure out if someone is a real victim or a narcissist? Listen to him. If he never ever says, I'm sorry, I did something wrong, it was partly my fault, I contributed to it somehow, I accept responsibility, accountability, I'm learning to recognize myself and my involvement in all this, if he never says I'm sorry, that's a narcissist. If he never says it's partly my fault, that's a narcissist. If he never accepts responsibility or his contributions to whatever has happened, that's a narcissist. Real victims go through thorough, functional, healing, soul searching. They recognize their contributions and their involvement, the wrong choices they've made, the bad decisions, and they vow to themselves to never repeat. But the narcissist, no way. He just happened to be there in the wrong time, in the wrong place. In the wrong place, that's all. None of it is ever his fault. None of it. Yeah, well, he did, he did misbehave here and there. He did steal. He did, forge. He did do all kinds of things, which happen to be anything between immoral and illegal. But so what? He did not deserve to be victimized. His own bad behavior is never acknowledged, and he never expresses remorse or regret, ever. That's a great sign for narcissists. Real victims never negate it. Never. And the last thing I would say, although there are quite a few other tests, but the last thing is automatism. The narcissist has at his disposal ready-made phrases, responses, answers, whole texts, and so on. So whenever the narcissist is confronted with a situation, he goes on autopilot. So whenever something bad happens to the narcissist, automatically he says, I've been a victim, I've been victimized, I'm codependent, I'm helpless, I'm traumatized, it's not my fault, and that's it, it's automatic. He never bothers to go deep, he never bothers to really think, he never bothers to introspect, he never bothers to analyze, he never bothers to synthesize, he never bothers to truly consult others. He doesn't really consult others, he goes through the motions very often, but in order to self-justify. And he blocks out any information that contradicts his self-justifying, alloplastic narratives. It's never my fault, I'm always the victim, I'm codependent, I'm traumatized, I'm helpless, and therefore I fall prey to malicious, malevolent predators out there. They are all bad, I'm all good, so I have nothing to apologize for. None of my behaviors has been wrong. I've never done anything wrong, ever. And that's me. That's a narcissist. Period. Come across someone like that, that's a narcissist. And never mind how eloquent he is, how charming he is, how attractive he is, how well-versed he is in the lore of victimhood, that's a narcissist. Simply a narcissist. Peel your eyes. Pierce and penetrate the facade. Have a real look at the person and ask yourself, is this human being on the screen or next to me or my workplace or my family, is this person real or is it an act? Is this person a victim or is it a narcissist claiming to be a victim? And I've just provided you with 4 tools to answer this question, so make good use of them.
Woman, Miss...
He's the Kazakh monger!
Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Grand Cafe, or more so the possible future for Grand Cafe in Warhammer 3. You see, right now there are 3 legendary lords: Miao Yin, Zhao Ming, and Yuan Bo, 3 Cafe dragons of the active 5 dragon children. And it has been like that for a while. Mind you, Cafe hasn't gotten a lot of DLC since the Backlash of Shadows and Change, and Warhammer 3 has been drip-feeding DLCs in all honesty. Now that's going to change with regards to a brand new content pack in the form of a character pack that we're seeing at some point this year.
You're telling them you don't know your social security number. Hold on. Why do you keep interrupting? That means you're lying. Stop.
On May 27th, 2023, officers were dispatched to a bank in response to a man attempting to commit fraud.
Hi. I'm gonna need you to wait a minute.
What's it?
Because you can't touch back and forth.
What's going on?
Just wait a minute. Because we had a call.
What's it?
Saying that you were trying to do some transactions and weren't using proper information.
How was I using proper information?
Well, we're gonna figure this out.
All right. I don't have nothing in my pocket.
Well, I don't want you to reach for anything. All right, you don't have any weapons or anything on you?
No, I don't have
All right,
weapons.
I'm just gonna pat you down, make sure, okay? Can you put your hands on top of your head for me and lace your fingers? Yep, thank you. Spread your feet for me.
Yep.
All right, thank you. All right, so what's your name? Well, don't reach for anything. Don't reach for anything.
I'm just getting my wallet.
You don't.
I'm sorry.
Look, when an officer tells you not to reach for something, you don't reach in your pockets. Okay?
Yeah, I'm
Pretty
sorry.
simple.
My bad. It's natural when you ask me something.
Well, when you are told not to reach for something, you don't reach.
Okay, I'm sorry. My fault.
So, what's your name?
David Purvis.
Baby?
David W. Purvis. D-U-R-U-B-A-S.
When you are told not to reach for something, you don't reach.
Okay, I'm sorry. My fault.
So, what's your name?
David Purvis.
Baby?
David W. Purvis. D-U-R-U-B-A-S.
A.S.?
Yes.
What's your social?
You guys got enough fucking question, man. I write down. Yeah, I like that. I write down.
Can you just tell me?
Yeah, it's easier for me to write down.
So, just tell me what it is.
Can I please write? I dyslexia, and it's hard for me to put numbers in order. It's all I want to do is just so I can write it down, and it'll be much easier for me to.
Just tell me what it is.
I can't recall. Can I sit down? My back is turning, please.
Yeah, sit down.
Thank you.
What's your birthday? What's your birthday?
7/31/58, man.
All right, what's the social?
I'm trying to think, man.
Where do we live?
I live in California.
You live in California?
Yes, yes. 242 West Fair Drive.
In California?
Yes, sir.
That's weird because you just gave that address that's on your ID from Colorado. So you got caught. You lied. Okay? No, listen to me. Okay? Because everybody you gave these cashier checks to have been going to other branches to cash them. Okay?
I didn't too?
Yes. So look, they spoke to this actual David. They spoke to him. He's in Colorado. He didn't authorize any of this.
Nobody spoke with me.
So you need to tell us who you are. Okay?
Nobody spoke
You
to me.
need to tell us who you are. Okay?
I'm
Because
telling you.
listen, it's kind of weird that you say you live in California, but you give your address that's on your
Listen, I
Colorado.
have several houses.
With the exact same address?
No, but I
That's
said
weird.
California. It's Colorado.
So what's your address in California? Because I'm going to verify it. I'm going to call that police department. Tell me what city.
What city?
Yeah, what city?
It's Springfield. But
Springfield, California?
It's
What's the address?
I don't.
So you just own houses that you don't know the address of?
It's an Airbnb actually, and it's.
So you rent an Airbnb?
Yes.
Okay, so what is the address?
I can look stuff up for you.
I want the address.
I don't know the stuff.
Because I'm going to call the owner of that Airbnb.
It's fine.
Where's your cell phone?
My cell phone's in my pocket.
Pull your cell phone out. Open your Airbnb account. So you don't actually live in California then?
No, I live in Colorado.
So why would you give the address for Colorado in California when you know it's an Airbnb?
Because you guys have me flustered, sir.
Have you flustered because you're stealing somebody's money?
You have me flustered.
Do you think banks are dumb?
I would hope not, because my money's in there.
Or somebody else's money that you're taking?
I would hope they're not dumb.
How'd you get here today?
I got a ride, got dropped off.
So where are you staying in Akron?
I'm not staying in Akron.
Where are you staying? In Ohio. Why are you in Ohio?
Because I just came to Ohio to visit my sister.
Where's your sister with?
Over in Avon.
In Avon. So what are you doing in Akron? Why would you come to the U.S. Bank in Akron? There's U.S. banks all over the country.
There is U.S. banks all over.
So why'd you choose Akron?
Because this is where he was driving, and this is where I...
So you decided to come almost an hour to go to the bank?
No, not necessarily. It's not. I didn't come here just to go to the bank.
So who drove you?
I don't know who.
So you randomly got in the car with a guy?
No, it's not a random guy. Either. It's
What's his name?
John. I don't remember his last name.
Okay, so a random guy that you don't know. Because I know all my friends' last names.
Especially when I get in the car with him.
Well, it's-
And you came an hour to go to the bank.
No, we came in an hour to go shopping.
Where? Where are you going shopping?
All over the place. We went to a few different
Please tell me where you're shopping in Akron.
We went to this. It was like a little thrift store over down the way. But
Where at?
I wasn't driving, so I don't know.
Where are your bags?
What do you mean, where am I
The shit that you bought.
And I left it in the car. They
Where's
dropped me
John?
off. They dropped me off.
Where did he go?
I don't know. He's probably waiting for me.
What kind of car does he drive?
Nissan.
He's on what?
Altima.
Well, there's no cars in the parking lot other than our
He
police
was
cars.
over there, too.
What's your sister's name?
Jenny?
Jenny? What's your last name?
U.S.?
Same as yours?
Yes.
What's your phone number?
My phone's dead. If I had it, I would give you all. I just tried something else.
So if I call the Littleton, Colorado Police Department, and I have them drive out to this address, there's not going to be another male with this exact same ID and same name, is there?
I sure would hope not. I would definitely hope not. I mean, if there was somebody there with my ID, then that's...
So let me ask you this. Why'd you pull out a bunch of cashier's checks and cash and stuff yesterday and then come out trying to pull out a bunch of cash today? Do you have bank cards?
I didn't pull out a
Do you have
bunch.
bank cards?
Yeah, I have my other bank card here.
Okay, so why are you continually
This is
coming
my
to
other bank, because it's based on around here.
Okay, so you come to U.S. Bank. From Avon, you come down to Akron to U.S. Bank. Okay? You don't choose the U.S. Bank downtown. You don't choose the U.S. Bank anywhere else. Hang on a second, okay? We ask you for your address. You give us this address and say it's in California, and this is a Colorado. Then you proceed to tell me you have multiple houses. So I tell you to tell me the address in California. Hold on, I'm not done. So I can look that up and have the police department in that town in California, which is Springfield. That's all you tell me. Springfield's 250 feet down the road, Springfield, Ohio. And then you proceed to tell me it's an Airbnb. Tell you to pull your phone out and show me the Airbnb account so I can confirm that. Conveniently, your phone's dead. You pull a bunch of cashier checks the other day. Your cashier checks end up with people with California IDs being cashed at different U.S. banks. You know all these banks, right? U.S. Bank talks to a male in Colorado with this same name that says, no, that is my bank account. No, I am not doing this.
And how am I supposed to... I lost an ID about... I don't know, a year or two ago, too, so they possibly could have my ID. I don't understand.
And you're a grown male who doesn't know his social.
So you lost an ID how long ago?
That was a couple years ago, so...
Was it? Because this was issued on 12/5/19. When you get issued a new one, a couple years ago would be 2 years ago, so 21.
It was a while ago. I don't know, like, the exact date.
You see how your story is making absolutely no sense? Did you say he doesn't know social?
Yes.
So he's lying.
No, if I asked her if I could write my social down, she won't.
Well, you got to remember it by... Do you have any other forms of ID in your wallet?
I have my bank card.
Let me see those. Do you have any healthcare cards?
If you don't know your social security, you're lying. Hold on, look at me. Look at me. I've been doing this 27 years. Every adult male I've ever talked to that said they don't know their social security number is lying. That's my history. Hold on, that's a known fact. So if you're telling them you don't know your social security number, hold on. Why do you keep interrupting? That means you're lying. Stop. That's not a Colorado social security number. So let's try again.
Here's the other weird thing. Hold on, here's the other weird thing. You were in this bank yesterday.
That's an Ohio social security.
So you're staying in Avon, and you guys decided to come all the way down from Avon, where there's multiple shopping places up there, in Cleveland, everywhere. You guys decided Akron, Ohio was the place you were going to go. Now.
I don't know.
To a thrift store.
No, that was one of the places we went to.
But now he's got a friend here. I thought you guys were shopping.
We came twice. We were here. That's the third time we were here.
What was that?
If you're shopping, why are your hands so dirty?
Huh?
I mean,
Why my hands are dirty?
Yeah.
what did you pull cashier's checks for yesterday?
To pay contract.
To pay a contractor? What was your contractor?
is negative. Expired driver. That social doesn't come back. They have to need to fill in or anything.
This makes no sense.
He's from Colorado.
U.S. Bank is a national branch, but you are specifically choosing this branch.
Not necessarily.
But you were here yesterday. This is the part I don't understand. You were here yesterday. You pulled a bunch of cashier's checks, okay? What contracting company are you using? Because I'm going to call them.
If I remember, I'll give you their phone number.
So you have no idea the name of the contracting company that you're giving thousands of dollars to.
His name is Roger Cooley.
So some random man.
No, he does. He
Okay. I'm not showing anything out of Colorado.
He travels all around the country.
My first marriage, I was 22. She was 19. It lasted. The marriage lasted 11 years. I mean, yeah. I mean, and we'll get into some of the parallels because as I was reading the book and I was talking to you off air about this, I'm like, that's me. You know, and that's the important part to take away from it is, you know, we're not the exceptions, we're the rule. You know, and that's where you can really benefit from it by understanding that this is what most guys go through. And we'll jump into it more. But I want to start out by asking you. You share so much in this, and it's so deeply personal. What got you started with keeping the journal, first of all? And it wasn't every single day, but it was a lot of days. So ultimately, what got you to start the journal, keep it going, and then the big one, deciding to share it all? I'm curious on that.
No, that's some really good context for interested readers. So it started when I was going to therapy. So this is during the separation, and I'll just set up a little bit of context here. So the journal starts during separation, and my reflection of the marriage, and there was her infidelity involved as well. I just couldn't process it. I didn't know how. So I was in therapy, and one of the suggestions that this woman had was, because I wanted to meet more frequently. So one of her recommendations was, well, write things down so the next time you come in, we can kind of go through things a little bit more quickly and cover more territory. And then she recommended, well, those really painful parts in that process, why don't you reflect on those? So these were things that happened a couple months prior, 3-4 months prior maybe. And then so it just grew from there. I lost my ability to pay for the sessions, and I just continued to do it. And after a while, it just became a habit. And after a while, continued, it became my therapy. And I wholeheartedly believed that. I wholeheartedly believed that I'd be dead if I hadn't written it. I'm sure you got to that point where I had those thoughts. Yeah. I think I looked at it one time. I think there's 246 days that I wrote in a little over 2 years. So there's a lot of days.
Yeah, I mean, it's like every other day on average, something like that. And I have to tell you, Todd, because one of the things that when I'm working with guys, I'm a huge advocate for a couple of reasons, is journaling.
Absolutely.
One of the biggest reasons is exactly what you said. It helps you reflect, it helps you kind of heal and all of that process. But there's also the legal side of it, because one of the things that guys really struggle with is we're human beings. Our memories are not perfect, not by any shot. And by journaling your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, hopefully in some facts as well, that can come back to pay off huge down the road. I use it myself as an example. There were times, because I went through family court for 12 years, I could look back on things I'd written 5-6 years earlier that were germane to what the problem was now and go, okay. And as I've relayed before on this podcast, I actually was allowed to bring my journal up on the stand. Her attorney didn't want it, but the judge let it in, so I could sit and read from it. And that had, oh my God, the effect that had. Because again, you want to keep factual in court, and I was, but you could also hear the emotion behind it. And that's something that, as I was reading through the book, and the emotional side of it is so critical. Because when I talk to guys about journaling, and I'm sure you've probably run into this too, they think it's either girly, wimpy, I'm not gonna keep a diary, all that stuff, right? But as you said, and I'll back you up on, is a way to deal with your emotions and dealing with the pain, the stress, all of that. As you were doing, can you go a little bit deeper on like the feelings you had as you were journaling? So what was happening?
Yeah, so and I'll go one step further. You mentioned the feelings and processing. In an email I think it was that you sent me, one of the best things that it helped me with, and yes, I did go back and reflect on my writing on occasion. I'd go back a week or 3 weeks or 3 months prior and read what I had written. Sometimes it would bring me to tears again as I was reading it, a month or 6 months later. Some of it still does, if I think about it too much. But yeah, but also as a way to think, holy shit, I went through that and I survived, because it was so challenging. I didn't have time to process, even the moment. I just get my thoughts down. 6-9 months later, I'd go back and be like, oh my God, how did I survive that? And then also, I come so far. There's so much that I've accomplished. I was really proud of myself. So I would say anybody, it's free therapy. It's so helpful. I would say anybody, don't worry about what people think about you. Just sit down and write. Go to a coffee shop. Take it out on a boat. Just some kind of notepad. Go do it. So I kind of went off a little bit there, but what I was feeling most of the time, it was just writing. What I thought at the time was a lot of mundane stuff. There's a lot of personal reflection on my feelings that I was having at that time. There were a few times where I was writing where I was extremely emotional, and in fact, I don't know if I actually wrote this in the journal pages or not, but for a long time I intentionally made an effort to not write when I was emotional, because I didn't want to be extremely sad, extremely pissed. I wanted to have kind of clarity as I was writing, just even for myself. But one time I can remember that I was just absolutely bawling as I was writing. It was that first Christmas Eve, about 6 months after the separation was signed. I was staying at my mother's house at the time, right? I'm in my early 30s. It was Christmas Eve. My mom, my stepdad, and my younger sister were in the next room watching a movie, and I'm in this spare bedroom with no one to talk to. I mean, I had my family there, but we didn't talk about personal things. Also, I couldn't go anything like that. I didn't have any friends, and lost a lot of those in the process. And I remember just bawling as I was writing. I wish somebody loved me. I mean, it's almost comical now, and it shouldn't be, I suppose, but it's like, oh my God, there's no one here. All I wanted for someone to love me. And it was, I still remember that.
And see, here's the important part of that. It's my opinion, and you can jump into it. That's what helps you heal, right? It's okay to cry. It's okay to have all those feelings you were sharing. Again, just to back you up, I went through similar stuff, right? I remember Christmases and birthdays and all that, not being able to see the kids and all that, and I would sit and cry also. And it's okay to do that. So many guys say, oh, it's not manly. Bullshit. It is manly. Okay,
it's helpful. It's helpful.
It is, but it takes strength to let the emotions out, not hold them in. That's a big takeaway, and that's where, again, one of the strengths of the book I think is it will teach guys that it is okay. And you keyed on something that I was going to mention later, but I might as well jump into it now, which is being able to go back and read it weeks, days, months, years, maybe decades later, can have a tremendous boost on your ego in some ways, your confidence in many ways, because you, like you said yourself, you survived this. And I've got all my journaling and all that. Mine were 3.5 years, how long ago mine was. But I just transferred them all over. They're all digital on my computers now. But as I read back, because my stuff was in there in the mid-90s, as I read back through that stuff and realized that, you know what, I survived a hell of a lot, and it made me better, right? And that's the big takeaway. That's why I'm such a strong advocate for journaling, because I'm not a huge fan of therapy. I'm not gonna lie. Just the mental health profession, with all due respect to the doctor, is a joke these days, right? But being able to see what you wrote and build on that, and go, like you said yourself, sometimes it's embarrassing, sometimes it's cathartic, sometimes it's confidence building, it's all of that. You get to re-experience those emotions, but you're coming at it from a better place, I think. And those are key things, don't you agree?
Absolutely. In fact, as I was getting this ready for print, I realized the one day, I pinpointed it to one day where I didn't change overnight, but I realized that I call it my fuck it day. It's the day that I realized, I'm done. I'm done with people. I'm done trying to satisfy others. I'm done listening to doing what other people want or think I should do. So that's now 20 years later, where I'm like, oh, well, that's about 18, 19 years later at this point. But I was like, oh my God, reflecting back, that makes so much sense. I wrote it on this day. And as I was, getting ready, putting this in paper, I was like, yep, now I can see the progression. I can tie it back to that one day. I was like, that makes so much sense. And that helps me out even now because it helps explain a lot of my personality, right? I can be abrasive, sometimes. I understand that, but a lot of it is because of these experiences. I have no shame in saying that. But yeah, I mean, just reaching back and being, oh, that's what happened. That's why I'm now like this. It's wonderful.
But it's a way that you can look back and assess your strengths, see your weaknesses, and work on them. That's the whole key with all of this.
Hey, what's up, Edo Shikado? How are you, man? What's up, Gabriel? Let me ask you, man. Were you able to get to try out some of the DLC in the units? How do you like that? How do you like that crack Cream API? Good stuff, huh, man?
Shalom, barbazonim chamudim sheli. Look it up. Society keeps telling you, if you're not having sex, especially casual sex, something is wrong with you. If you're not in a relationship, every single day of every single week, something is definitely wrong with you. And if you're incapable of intimacy, then you're lacking the basic constituents.
Yeah, man. Nah,
to be human.
It's hard to find time.
These are society's messages. Society wants you to conform. Society wants you to be a herd animal. And yet, studies and surveys like the Pew Center surveys consistently show that anywhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of adults don't feel comfortable in relationships.
Surprised he wants to do a non-aggression pact.
They're not content.
So here's your... Tamarkan was about to attack me, so I triggered the settlement to avoid a war. But I'm thinking I'll do a non-aggression pact until I get rid of this Skaven.
So today we are going to discuss
and then
a new spin on or relatively new spin on attachment theory. Not the
nice, man.
You know, secure, insecure attachment styles. I've done. There's a video I've made about these issues, and you can watch it separately. But today I'm going to discuss an attachment theory, which is actually the recent iteration of attachment theory, which deals with danger, and more specifically, danger in relationships, and how do we survive such dangers. My name is Sam Vaknin, and apropos danger, I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited, and I'm a danger to all future generations, because I'm a professor of psychology, and I mold psychologists and psychiatrists in several countries. How's that for danger? Okay, Shoshanim, let's delve right in. And start with the fact that not everyone is supposed to be in a relationship. I'm going to repeat this sentence, and I want you to listen to it well, because many of you are going to feel a wave of relief wash over you. Not everyone is built to be in a relationship. It's okay if you are not in a relationship. It's okay if you don't want relationships. It's okay if you don't want intimacy. It's okay if you want to be celibate. And it's okay if you want to have casual sex, as long as you don't cheat yourself, you don't deceive yourself about the nature of what it is that you do. There are different attachment styles. And insecure attachment styles predict recurrent relationship failure. So why go there? And no, attachment styles cannot be changed. They are ingrained patterns of relating to other people. And they usually emerge in late childhood and early adolescence. It is possible in theory to modify some behavior attendant upon attachment styles, but you can't change the basic attachment style. Your basic attachment style. I'm sorry. This is the fact. So if you are one of the several types...
No, they didn't take Zarnagrund.
Then relationships, intimacy...
They would have a hard time doing that. They'd lose to the garrison.
Marriage, family...
They just randomly... I declared war on
everyone around you,
on one of them, and the other one declared on me.
You don't have
and I have an army full of goblins. So let me show you this little trick.
But the fact is, you lack these skills.
They did get rid of
setting boundaries.
Oh my God, Sale killed Zatanna Black. Damn.
Without which intimacy and
I didn't realize he was
become traps. The other person
wow, Sale's big. He's got 15 settlements.
Across multiple studies, at least 15%, that's 15%, that's 1 of 7 adults state that they are much more comfortable, much happier, much more content, much more satisfied being alone. They like to be alone. There's a whole subgroup of schizoids and schizoid-like personalities. Lynn Sperry described the schizoid personality. There are, of course, people with mental health disorders. For example, schizoid personality disorder, paranoid personality disorder, obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. And these personality disorders and other mental health issues such as bipolar disorder and so on preclude functional relationships. If we put all of these together, there's about 15% who'd rather be alone. 31% of adults are lifelong singles. 1/3 of adults spend their entire life being single. This has always been the case, by the way. In the Victorian era, these women were called spinsters, and their male equivalents were called eternal bachelors. And then much later in the 70s, there was the Peter Pan syndrome. People refused to grow up and assume adult chores and responsibility and adult roles in society. This was castigated as a form of infantilism. The majority of the rest of the people, the other 2/3, they are immured.
Okay, this is good. So this is why they're trying to attack me. Is I have an army of literally goblin laborers that every turn they're getting 500 label from Zarnagrund. I've never seen this Skaven take Zarnagrund.
These are
I've seen Grimgor take Zarna Grun.
What we call pseudo relationships.
And I've seen Tamarkon one time who took Zarna Grun. But that's it. I've never seen the Skaven take Zarna Grun because look at this army.
They are dysfunctional.
In auto resolve,
they're abusive.
This is a very strong army because auto resolve or range units, the auto resolve estimates that all the units, the range units, are going to fire all their ammo, even if they don't. So range units can be very strong in auto resolve. That's why.
Intimacy and love, anyhow, are lost arts.
Okay, so this guy's in force march, and then he also has chaos damage.
Personal predilections and proclivities, and it's a miracle that anyone ends up with anyone else. The problem is that some people feel threatened, or they feel constrained, suffocated.
So this is like it's just a chaff army for raiding, because the quality of the unit doesn't matter. It's the quantity.
These kind of people anticipate failure, hurt, misery, and discord, and so they develop anticipatory anxiety. They know it's going to end badly, and so they gear themselves and prepare themselves for the ineluctable.
I may need to replace this guy with someone better.
Catastrophe. They catastrophize. They preemptively, as an anxiolytic strategy, an anxiety-reducing strategy, they preemptively bring about the very outcomes of which they are terrified. They repeatedly adopt dysfunctional behaviors. It's like these people are saying, "Let the other shoe drop. I can't bear it anymore. If anything bad is going to happen, it's going to happen. Let it happen now. And I'm going to make sure that it does happen. I'm going to provoke my partner. I'm going to cheat on my partner. I'm going to misbehave. I'm going to avoid my partner. I'm going to develop an addiction." There are numerous strategies to destroy and sabotage and undermine a relationship. These are relationship misfits. These people can't have intimacy, relationships, and love.
Oh, look at that trait. Plus 12 plus 8. That's a good trait. Look at that. Plus 12 plus 8, and then character experience gain plus 50.
That which we cannot get.
That's extremely good.
We want most what we are incapable of. We dream and fantasize because we can't face reality. We can't face our own limitations and constraints in reality. So of course, people with insecure attachment styles, the thing they want most is to have a long-term, committed, loving, embracing, accepting, warm.
This could be good against this Skaven apathetic. I'm gonna go with this. Ambush defense chance plus 20%.
And so
I'll replace him because I need a caster.
Undermine their relationships. They gain fake intimacy and acceptance and fake warmth via sex with strangers. Some of them even have sex with groups of strangers just to be accepted, just to feel a warm body next to them, just to be the center of attention, just for a fleeting moment to experience intimacy. They feel liked, air quotes. They feel loved. They feel that they are in a connection when they are what they're actually doing is casual drunk encounters with anonymous partners in settings. So these people want relationships, crave intimacy, can't get it, so they lie to themselves. They lie to themselves. They team up with strangers for sex, and they conflate and confuse sex with intimacy, and they conflate and confuse these strangers with intimate partners. Typically, they experience
Alright, let's go ahead. This should be a fun fight.
And they resolve this dissonance by dissociating.
Oh, you gotta go to the hospital, man.
They numb their emotions. They abuse substances.
Well, look at this. Look at this. Look at this trait. This is a rework trait.
Some people
plus 20% defense chance, plus 8 melee defense, and then defensive stance, which gives him charge resistant, then armor. But these are the two main ones. And then the hero action success chance.
Because I want it.
Well, why do you gotta go to the hospital, man? Are you okay?
I'm empowered. It's nonsense, of course. It's self-deception. Very primitive one of them. And it coalesces into a crusty ideology. And this ideology sometimes becomes public in victimhood movements, like feminism, late feminism. People who dread intimacy feel a lot more unencumbered with strangers. They feel that an interaction with a stranger is easier, lighter, less threatening, more pleasant, and has an end, has a horizon. Doesn't have to go on forever. There are no demands, no commitments, minimal investment. And so it's all light-hearted fun. But that's not what they want. They want intimacy. They want depth. They want the profundity of a relationship. They want to be known and seen. And you can't have that in casual sex or in a one-night stand. So what they do, these people, they use fantasy to compensate for the low level of intimacy in these unsatisfactory, exploitative, and often predatory.
So I have a summon. I have the Kadai Fireborn summon. I'm going to use it to take out their cavalry, or to take out their artillery.
Those who had gone through
and actually have these guys too.
Of pseudo relationships, they give up on the chase. They give up on the chase. They settle into a career-centered life of celibacy and self-sufficiency. Okay, that's the introduction. Now, today I want to introduce you to a cutting-edge model of attachment known as dynamic maturational model of attachment and adaptation. It deals, of course, with relationships, the effect of relationships on human development and human functioning. It starts with relationships between children and parents, and goes all the way to relationships between what they call, what the theory calls, reproductive couples. It's an extension of late work by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth.
Bad case of diarrhea. Sounds like you ate something bad, man.
John Bowlby.
Maybe you have food poisoning. I would go to the hospital. It sounds like you have food poisoning.
Emphasis on attachment, safe base, love.
I could be wrong, but that sounds a lot like
emphasis on danger. Mary Ainsworth was the first to introduce the concept of danger, life's many dangers, and how the dangers of life drive adaptation. All kinds of adaptations. One of them is attachment. But DMM, I remind you, the dynamic maturational model of attachment and adaptation. Yes, DMM from now on. DMM was initially put together, coalesced in the work of Patricia McKinsey Crittenden. Crittenden, C-R-I-T-T-E-N-D-E-N. Patricia McKinsey Crittenden. She had many colleagues, collaborated with many other scholars like Lala, Angelica Clausen, Andrea.
Yeah, man, it sounds like you got a case of food poisoning.
Was a speaker, and many others. So, the DMM's main tenet is that exposure to danger drives neural development and adaptation in order to promote survival, and that the greatest dangers are in relationships. And now the problem is that people with insecure attachment styles perceive dangers in relationships even when there are none. They perceive the relationship itself as a danger, and the intimacy in the relationship as a catastrophe. So they are threatened, not by something that happens in the relationship, not by some developments, not by some events, or not by the choices and decisions of their partners. They are threatened by the very existence, factual existence of the relationship. Being in a relationship, in their minds, constitutes danger. Just to clarify something, DMM does not recognize the distinction between secure and insecure attachment styles. It actually dispenses with the whole idea of attachment style. So I'm conflating them, I'm confusing a bit. Several attachment theories when I'm talking to you right now, but I'm eclectic. I believe you should take the best from each theory. You don't need to adhere religiously to a single one. So when a person needs protection, when a person needs comfort from danger, they go to someone else. They go to another person. They develop protective relationships. So we all develop protective relationships. We perceive dangers in the environment, sometimes in ourselves, but definitely in the environment. We perceive dangers in our relationships, and then we adopt someone else.
Ooh, I'm gonna focus down these rather than.
Borderlines call it special friend. And so the protective relationship is very crucial because the nature of the relationship generates relation-specific self-protective strategies. In other words, relationships dictate the strategies for self-protection, not the other way. Until recently, until Crittenden's work, we thought that relationships, strategies dictate relationships. Crittenden upended this. She suggests that relationships actually dictate which strategies are available to us in terms of self-protections. The DMM describes protective strategies, aspects of
Nice, was able to take out that whole unit rather.
Patients, clients, long-term professionals. I mean, it's very complex and very confounded, and a very fascinating theory. And I recommend that you have a deeper look at it in your spare time. What I would like to focus on today is a lot more pragmatic, a lot more practical. How does DMM translate into day-to-day attachment reactions? How do we look at everyone around us and classify them in terms of the various strategies of DMM attachment? So to do this, I would like to recap, perhaps more in layman's terms, I'd like to recap the DMM, the dynamic maturational model of attachment and adaptation, DMM. It emphasizes the dynamic interaction of maturation of the human organism across the lifespan in the context in which maturational possibilities are used. And they're used for three goals to satisfy, to meet three needs, requirements, and goals. So, the DMM says there is an interaction between
damn, they have more.
Interaction between organisms. This drives neurological development of the brain.
These goblins just have one job.
These development
job is to that.
Now, the context, the relationships determine the strategies and the pathways of neural development. And there are three goals, three aims. One is to protect the self. The second goal is to reproduce. And the third goal is to protect one's offspring or progeny. So, very simple. Protect yourself so that you can reproduce, so that you can protect your children. Maturation in DMM is neurological, mental, physical, everything. It's an integrated theory of attachment. It involves the increase in potential during childhood and adulthood, but also...
Dude, these are like the best. One of my favorite heroes in the game, dude.
And it
We
deals
killed this
with
lord so
multiplicity
fast.
of context, people and places that affect development, anything from family to school to workplace, etc. It's a very rich deal. The context is not limited to the environment, so it's not an strictly environmental theory, because there are attachment theories that attribute attachment reactions and attachment strategies to environmental cues exclusively, not the DMM. The context of the DMM includes internal challenges, but also interpersonal challenges. In other words,
You just saw the plane called Catapult. I just
processes one has with other people in different periods of the lifespan: infancy, preschool, school age, adolescence, adulthood. And the outcome of all these complexes, webs of interactions embedded in context and with other people, the outcome of all this is kind of emerging organization. Again, the DMM does not accept.
Alright, we killed one of the lords.
Disorganized attachment and
Now we gotta try to
the
get.
DMM says there's no such thing as disorganized attachment. There's no way to survive without attachment. And there's no way to come up with an attachment strategy if it's not organized. So the DMM dispenses with the idea of disorganized attachment. But the outcome of the DMM is the organization of mental and behavioral strategies of protection for the self and for one's children. And these are the patterns of attachment. So the DMM actually, the main hypothesis of the DMM is that maturation creates complexity. Maturation creates novelty. Maturation drives us to develop ever newer, ever more novel and complex mental and behavioral processes. Changes in context provide the occasion and the catalyst for using these processes and they give rise to these processes. So there's a need for maturing individuals to attribute meaning. It's an integral part of my work as well. I think there's nothing more important to people than meaning. Maturing individuals, according to the DMM, need to imbue complex, ambiguous, incomplete, and deceptive information with meaning. So they're busy all the time making sense of what's happening around them and to them and with other people in ways that promote self-protective behavior. It's interaction of maturation with experience. The particular organization of self-protective behavior reflects the strategies. And these strategies help individuals to identify, prevent, and protect themselves from the dangers of particular contexts and particular relationships. At the same time, this promotes exploration of other people, aspects of life, the environment, and via introspection of oneself. Exposure to danger differs by age, differs by person, family, cultural groups, but ultimately, the patterns of attachment will reflect individual developmental history, family organization of self-protective strategies, and cultural experience with persistent local dangers. That's the DMM. And now, the DMM accounts fully for people with insecure attachment styles, for people who are incapable of intimacy, love, and functional relationships. But to get there, we need to understand that as we grow up, as we move through the lifespan, we grow older, we keep accumulating layers upon layers of attachment strategies. And all these attachment strategies are simultaneously functional. So it would be wrong to reduce any single individual to a single attachment strategy, a single attachment pattern, or a single attachment theory, style, because everyone displays very complex multi-layered archaeological and historical behavior when it comes to relating to other people. Of course, in infancy, the repertoire is very limited. Now, Crittenden adopted Ainsworth's ABC classification. Ainsworth came up with 3 types of attachment strategies, attachment situations, following the famous stranger experiment, stranger condition. So, Ainsworth suggested that there's ABC, and only B is confident, secure, safe space attachment. A and C are not. So, Crittenden and her collaborators had adopted this ABC classification, and they divided attachment strategies to ABC. So, in childhood, we have the first type of attachment strategy we develop is inhibited, socially passive. So this is called A12 strategy. A12 strategy uses cognitive prediction in the context of very little real threat. It can be described as anticipatory anxiety. Attachment figures in this inhibited style, attachment figures are idealized by overlooking their negative qualities. And this is typically what babies do. Overlook mommy's negative qualities. Because if mommy is a negative figure, if she's bad object, it's very threatening. And this is where Icard wins the Klein, Melanie. It's a really tend to idealize the mother. I think the splitting theory in early object relation schools got it totally wrong. Crittenden agrees. So in the inhibited attachment style, attachment figures like mommy are idealized by overlooking the negative qualities. The self is put down a bit. So to create a comparative good-bad dichotomy. It's a called dichotomous thing. Most children, most babies, most infants with this inhibited attachment style, A12, they're predictable and responsible. And when they become adult, they become predictable and responsible people. Cool, they're businesslike. Type A strategies all rely on inhibition of feelings. They set danger at a psychological distance from the self. It's like if I don't show you who I am, if I'm inhibited, if I don't lose control, then I can keep the danger at arm's length. And this strategy is first used at infancy. I mean, mothers would describe cold babies with kind of RAD, mild RAD, reactive attachment. The second strategy is B12. Again, we are right now in infancy, the first few formative years, let's say 0 to 4 or 0 to 6. So the second attachment style that emerges in this infancy phase is B12. Remember, these attachment styles start at infancy, but remain for life. Other attachment styles start in puberty and remain for life. There is an accrual.
I had a feeling I'd be able to beat him.
We will come when we wrap up all this.
As long as I use my youth.
To the issue of people who cannot have intimacy in relationship. Why is that? Okay, so B12 is known as the reserved attachment strategy. These individuals are a bit more inhibited with regard to negative effect, but are inherently balanced and well-functioning. So they are a bit reserved. They will not show anger, or visible envy, or any negative affectivity, but they're essentially balanced. B12 is a constructive, productive, functional attachment strategy. B3, again in infancy. The type B strategy involves a balanced integration of temporal prediction with affect. Let me explain this. Type B individuals show all kinds of behavior, but they are very similar in that they're able to adapt to a wide variety of situations in ways which are self-protective, protective of their children, and that as often as possible cause others no harm. So it's a kind of, the B strategies are strategies that like live and let live.
These guys are pretty good. 1500 value. The magma cannon is better than I thought.
They communicate directly, negotiate differences, find mutually satisfactory compromises. They distort cognitive and affective information very little.
1500 value. The magma cannon is definitely one to fight.
Relationship material. These are the good ones, the ones that got away. Finally, people with B strategies display a wider range of individual variation than people using other strategies. Because people using other strategies, they go through a process called constriction. They constrain their functioning. They alter their behavior and their strategies and their choices and their decisions in order to employ their attachment strategy. B people with B strategies don't do this. This strategy functions in infancy. By adulthood, two sorts of B strategies.
Oh, I didn't kill Tretch. I thought I killed him. I must have ended the game.
To grow up in safety and security with good enough parenting. Mature bees have reached neurological maturity, usually by the mid-30s. Have reached neurological maturity. They function in life's major roles, as a spouse, as a parent, as someone's child, and they carry out an ongoing process of psychological integration across relationships, roles, and contexts. Naive bees tend to be simplistic. Mature bees grapple with life's complexities and nuances, but both of them are very good for relationships. Both of them are very, very healthy attachment strategies. B45, that's a reactive strategy. These are individuals who exaggerate negative effects, but only a bit. They're a bit sentimental, sometimes they're irritated, but inherently they're still balanced. Generally, these strategies are balanced. Now we come to dysfunctional strategies. You remember that A and C are not safe strategies, not functional, not balanced, not secure, insecure. That's Ainsworth contribution. So let's now review the C strategies that emerge in childhood and remain for life. C12, threatening, disarming strategy. It involves relying on one's own feelings to guide behavior. These are the kind of people who say, I trust my intuition, I'm never wrong. So they would rather trust their gut instincts than any rational analysis and any countervailing information, data. They have confirmation bias, which is centered on their own grandiose infallibility.
Oh, it's one that has no active plays. That's a good ability.
Somewhat exaggerated, and they display negative effect. So they're a bit off the charts, they're a bit out there. And their main aim is to influence other people's behavior. So what they do, they exaggerate their displayed negative effect, or they change it suddenly. That is intermittent reinforcement. Specifically, the strategy of C12 consists of splitting, exaggerating, and alternating the display of mixed negative feelings in order to attract attention and manipulate the feelings and responses of other people. The alternation is between presentation of a strong, angry, invulnerable self who blames others for any problem, and the appearance of a weak, fearful, and vulnerable self who entices others to give succorance and protection. So we have this alternation. C12 is a very normal strategy found in people with low risk for mental health problems and a great zest for life. So, while C12 is a manipulative strategy and grounded in some form of grandiosity, it is still highly functional for the individual, and to some extent, highly functional for the intimate partner of the individual. So this is the picture in infancy. One could say that in infancy, the preponderance of dysfunctional attachment strategies is very low, because the child cannot afford to not get attached. A child whose attachment strategy fails is at risk for her life. It's a question of survival. You need to attach. Even if you are C-type, even if you are A-type, which are very bad types, as we will see later on, you still need to attach. So there's a lot of constraining of negative affectivity, of changeability, of mood lability. There's a lot of constricting and constraining of mental health effects. Still, theoretically, ostensibly, all these infantile attachment styles can still lead to mature, adult, functional relationships. Then, what happens is, most infants tend to grow up. As they grow up, they begin to develop attachment strategies which are really, really problematic for relationships, intimacy, and love. So let's continue. You remember all the previous attachment strategies, the infancy ones? They prevail, they continue into preschool. So in the preschool, in the infancy phase, the parents mediate the effect of the context upon the infant, including the risk to the infant. Yes, the infant perceives risk and develops strategies mediated via his parents. He has no direct access to reality or to the environment. But in preschool, the child begins to learn safe forms of self-reliance for short periods of time. He's beginning to wander off. He's beginning to, in other words, separate and become an individual. And so all the previous strategies continue well into preschool, and well into the grave, throughout life. But new strategies are added. The first new strategy is A3. Individuals using this strategy, known as compulsive caregiving. It's actually a strategy first described by Bowlby in 1973. So individuals using this strategy rely on predictable contingencies, inhibit negative affect, and protect themselves by protecting their attachment figure. In childhood, these people try to cheer up or care for a sad, withdrawn, depressed, unavailable, vulnerable attachment figure. In other words, they parentify themselves. They become parent figures to their own attachment figures. Attachment figures are another name for parents in most cases. So these children learn that if they want the attachment figure to stick around, and if they want the attachment figure to function even minimally, they have to parent the attachment figure. So they parentify themselves. And so they try to cheer up the parental figure. They try to care for the parental figure. In adulthood, these people usually find employment where they rescue or care for others. They have very strong savior, rescuer complexes. And so they gravitate towards other people who appear weak and needy. And this is also true in intimate relationships. They fix people. They're fixers. They're healers. And so they would tend to have this messiah fixer complex when they come across potentially a partner. I'm going to fix her. I'm going to make her better. I'm going to heal her with my love. The precursors of A3 and A4 can be seen even in infancy. It's in the strange situation experiment. It's very clear. But the strategy only functions fully in preschool years. And so individuals in this period begin to show signs of this. Now, A3 is where we first encounter promiscuity, casual sex, avoidance of intimacy. And here's what the literature says. Individuals with A3 and A4 use a compulsively promiscuous strategy. This is from, I'm quoting Crittenden, 1995. They use a compulsively promiscuous strategy to avoid genuine intimacy while maintaining human contact. So, in casual sex, when you're promiscuous, you have human contact, you have a warm body, you have the smells and the taste of a partner. But it's not real intimacy. It's not genuine intimacy. It's fake, it's like junk food. It's fake, it's passing, it's ephemeral. And so these people avoid genuine intimacy, says Crittenden, while maintaining human contact and in some cases satisfying sexual desires. Crittenden says, these people with A3, A4 strategy show false positive affect, including sexual desire, to little known people, strangers. And they protect themselves from rejection by engaging with many people superficially and not getting deeply involved with anyone. This strategy develops in adolescence, when past intimate relationships have been treacherous, and strangers appear to offer the only hope of closeness and sexual satisfaction. It may be displayed in socially promiscuous manner that does not involve sexuality, or, in more serious cases, as sexual promiscuity. Crittenden regards sexual promiscuity as
oh, hey, yeah, Francesca
attachment dysfunction.
GFX481.
And I'm not talking about
thanks for tuning into the
basically an empowered choice.
Chat. I just saw your message.
That involves sexual
my cousin wants me to play this game, so I came here to watch what it's about.
Now, A4 compulsively complies.
It's a strategy game.
Actually first described by Crittenden and Dibala.
It's a strategy game with like 28 different races.
Negative effect, and they protect themselves by doing what attachment figures want them to do. They are people pleasers, codependents. If the attachment figure is angry and threatening, the compliance level.
It's kind of like Civilization. If Civilization was actually a good game.
Tend to be excessively vigilant, hyper-vigilant, quick to anticipate and meet other people.
It's a very deep game because it's been worked on for over 10 years.
The anxiety, however, is ignored and downplayed by the individual, and often is somatized. It appears in bodily symptoms that are brushed aside as being unimportant. These A3 and A4 emerge in preschool and remain for life. And so, during preschool period, we have the A3, A4, but we also have the C3 and C4. The C3-4, aggressive, feigned, helpless. It's a strategy that involves alternating aggression with apparent helplessness to cause other people to comply out of fear of being attacked, or to cause people to assist out of fear that one cannot care for oneself. So it's dual messaging. It's like a mixed signal. I'm going to attack you, so you better comply. You better do what I want you to. You better cater to my needs. And if not, then I'm going to destroy myself. I'm going to victimize myself because I'm helpless, and I can't do otherwise. So you need to help me. You need to help me because I cannot care for myself. So there's an alternation between these two, this aggression and learned or feigned helplessness. Individuals using C3, which is the aggressive variant, this strategy, they emphasize their anger in order to demand caregivers' compliance. And those using the C4, feigned helplessness, which is a form of aggression, of course. Codependency involves emotional blackmail. It's aggression. So C4, feigned helplessness, these people give signals of incompetence, inadequacy, submission, need, extreme neediness. The angry presentation, C3, elicits compliance and guilt in other people, whereas the vulnerable presentation, C4, elicits rescue, saving, fixing, healing. Now, again, you can see all these behaviors in infancy, but the strategy only functions, only blossoms, flourishes in preschool years. And then, of course, after preschool, what do we have? School.
Oh, I had a feeling you were doing commissions. Yeah. What is it? Humanity never ceases to surprise me. Yeah, as soon as I saw your name, Francisca GFX481, I said, all right, it's a woman, it's a graphic artist, it's someone trying to show their crappy art in 2026 when AI art exists and I can generate my own art anytime I want. I don't need you. Do you get that through your skull? I have AI. Why would I need you? Typical Latino, just coming in, trying to make a quick buck. Yeah, no value. You're a value taker. Is what you're called, a value taker. And I'm a streamer. I'm here to watch people. I'm here for people to watch me so I can make money. So I think you should probably find another channel to watch. Because two beggars together, that's one beggar too much. But no, I'm not interested in buying your crappy AI generated inner panels that I can generate myself. Thanks anyways. Thanks for nothing.
These people appear invulnerable. They dismiss other people's perspectives while forcing other people to attend to them, and they mislead other people regarding their own inner feelings of helplessness and desire for comfort. So it's a facade, it's a compensatory thing, and it's very reminiscent, of course, of grandiose narcissism or overt narcissism. Individuals using the C6, which is seductive, this strategy, they give the appearance of needing rescue from dangerous circumstances that are in fact self-induced. C6 individuals mislead other people regarding how angry they are, and this alternating pattern is often seen in bully-victim pairs, with gangs and violent couples, where the hidden half of the pattern is usually forgotten or forgiven until the presentation reverses. And this strategy develops during the school years, but actually it doesn't function fully until adolescence, which is the next stage in the lifespan. In adolescence, we transform best friend attachments into romantic, reciprocal attachments with a sexual component. It's here where the failure starts. Here, people who are incapable of love, romantic attachments, intimacy, and relationships, here they trigger in adolescence. So in adolescence, again, we have all the previous attachment strategies, A1 through A3, A4, and so on and so forth. We have all the previous strategies, but we have a few new ones. So we have A5. A5 individuals use a compulsively promiscuous strategy. And so, I mentioned it before, and so A5 blossoms in adolescence, is where it starts to manifest really powerfully and becomes the dominant attachment strategy for life. People say, well, people can change, it's you shouldn't inquire too deeply into the past history of your partner. What matters is how your partner is behaving with you now. That's nonsense.
I'm not a bot. No, a bot would be better than you. You're a Latino trying to mooch.
For example, attachment strategies and attachment styles.
Broke Latino trying to make a quick buck.
Really, really deeply into the background of your partner. Sexual history, relationship history, intimacy skills, relationship outcomes,
Moron.
infidelity if there was any, etc. You need to do all this because it's going to repeat itself. We know, for example, that people who had cheated once are 3 to 5 times more likely to cheat again. We even know that people who had been cheated on are far more likely to be cheated on again. It's all pretty predictable. We're pretty predictable people. So this is the strategies that are described here are very, very important. They're very important because they give you the tools to classify sort of your potential.
Oh my god, bro.
To classify yourself. And so
I'm not gonna add you on Discord or Instagram. Stupid Latino idiot. You're definitely a bot. You're either a bot or you're worse than a bot. But anyways, go find somewhere else to deck.
Strategy. As I said, it's intended to avoid genuine intimacy. And so
Estúpido.
A6
Latino.
is a really new layer, a really new strategy which emerges in adolescence. It was first described by Bowlby, who else?
Naco Latino pendejo.
Individuals who use A6. It's a compulsively self-reliant strategy. These people don't trust other people. They regard other people as unpredictable in their demands. They find themselves inadequate in meeting these demands. So they avoid other people and their demands because they think the demands would be vicious, arbitrary, and also they don't believe that they are adequate to answer these demands. People with A6 inhibit negative effect. They protect themselves by relying on no one other than themselves. They're totally self-sufficient and self-contained. They expect nothing from others. They never ask for help. They reject advice as an intrusion, as an imposition. This protects herself from other people, but at the cost of lost help, lost advice, lost comfort, succor, and assistance. It's a big loss. It's not a very wise or clever trade-off, and it's very defensive. Usually the A6 strategy develops in adolescence, after individuals have discovered that they cannot regulate the behavior of important but dangerous or non-protective givers, caregivers. So these people withdraw from close relationships as soon as they are old enough to care for themselves. There is a social form of strategy in which individuals function adaptively in social and work contexts, but are distant when intimacy is expected, in an isolated form. So some people function perfectly in their careers, in their workplaces, but when intimacy is involved, their coldness, detachment, avoidance, withdrawal render it impossible for them to connect. There's another form in which individuals, A6 individuals, cannot manage any interpersonal relationship, and they withdraw as much as possible from other people, totally, to the point of celibacy and schizoid kind of solitude. And so this emerges in adolescence. A6 emerges in adolescence, and many of these adolescents are sometimes misdiagnosed as schizotypal, or they're the weirdos of the class, and they're mocked and they're outcasts, they're excommunicated, they're ostracized, they are ridiculed, and so on and so forth. And they remain like this for life. And finally, we reach adulthood. Most of us. We reach adulthood where we establish symmetrical and reciprocal spousal romantic attachments that foster both partners' development. And there is the nurturance of children in non-reciprocal and non-symmetrical attachment relationships, in which the adult is the attachment figure. So we play a dual role. We play a role of an equal with our intimate partner and a role of an attachment figure, which is, again, non-symmetrical, with our children, if we have any. All the previous attachment strategies are active very much and in play, including many of them who preclude intimacy, love, and relationship, make them impossible. But there are a few additional layers, a few additional strategies that emerge only in adulthood. A7, delusionally idealizing individual. It's a late addition. Crittenden first described it in 2000. These people have had repeated experience with severe danger that they cannot predict or control. They display brittle, false positive affect and protect themselves by imagining that they're powerless or hostile attachment figures to protect them. This is a very desperate strategy, believing falsely in safety when no efforts are likely to reduce the danger. It's a kind of hostage syndrome. Paradoxically, the appearances of these people, of A7 people, their appearance is generally pleasing, and there's no hint of the fear and trauma that lie behind the nice exterior, until circumstances produce a breaking function. They suddenly collapse mentally. This pattern only develops in adulthood, which says a lot about the kind of adulthood that modern people have. A8, externally assembled self, also described for the first time by Crittenden in 2000. So, people with A8 attachment strategy do as other people require. They're people pleasers. They have few genuine feelings of their own, and they try to protect themselves by absolute reliance on other people, usually professionals who replace their absent or endangered attachment figures. So Münchhausen syndrome, Münchhausen by proxy syndrome, may be an extension of this. Both A7 and A8 are associated with pervasive and sadistic early abuse and neglect. Finally leads us to psychopathy. Psychopathy emerges in adulthood, and it's known as the A plus C plus strategy, or AC strategies. They combine the sub-patterns of both A and C, like it's the best of both worlds. In practice, most of these people have distorted patterns. For example, A34 is higher, C34 is higher. This kind of thing. Individuals using these strategies display very sudden shifts in behavior, very impulsive, and defiant and reckless. In the cases of blended strategies, they show very subtle mixing of distortion and deception. And the extreme form of this is, of course, psychopathy. So, if you have a look, if you review, if you listen back to this recording, you will reach the very sad conclusion that the majority of attachment strategies are focused around fending off danger, protecting oneself, and therefore they are not very conducive to intimacy, love, and relationship. Finally, there's C778, menacing paranoia. It's the most extreme of Type C strategies. It involves a willingness to attack anyone, combined with a fear of everyone. Type C strategies all involve mistrust of consequences and an excessive reliance on one's own gut feelings. At the extreme, this pattern becomes delusional, with delusions of infinite revenge over ubiquitous enemies, menacing strategy, C7. On the reverse side, there's paranoia regarding these enemies, C8. These two strategies do not become organized before early adulthood. Reviewing these attachment strategies tells us that when we attempt true intimacy, true love, and abiding, functional relationships, we have to overcome many layers of disturbed attachment strategies that lead to fear, danger, avoidance, withdrawal, negative affectivity, or self-denial and self-deception. It is not, therefore, surprising that so many of us faint in our quest to find warmth, acceptance, and a friend for life, and even the most basic and primitive of all needs and desires, sex.
Hey, thanks, G. Man, take care, man. Go to the hospital, man. Your health is what matters. I know, Shepado. Go to the hospital, man. I hope you feel better.
You can look at it as 3 ages of civilization, each signified and connoted by its biochemical. So you have the age of testosterone, which is the patriarchy, since the agricultural revolution until about 150 years ago. Then you have the age of oxytocin, which is the age of romanticism. And then you have the age of dopamine, which is the age we live in. And what I would like to do, I would like to give you an overview of these 3 biochemicals, hormones, neurotransmitters, and how they correspond to the social and cultural structures that have been created to cater to the needs and mores of the respective ages of civilization. So we start with testosterone, which corresponds to the age of patriarchy. Testosterone is involved in facilitating almost all social behaviors and almost all internal states. It's an amazing hormone. An amazing hormone because it regulates aggression, dominance, selfishness, antisocial behavior, anxiety, depression, so quite a list of negative traits and behaviors and moods and effects. But on the other hand, it is also the prime regulator of social behaviors. So victory or defeat, aggression and pathologies like anxiety and depression, but also sexual motivation, fecundity, all kinds of courting behaviors, bonding, attachment not in pairs, because that's the role of oxytocin, but attachment in social units, parental care, for example. So testosterone is probably closely associated with the formation of the patriarchy, because the patriarchy, the rule of men, the age of men, was founded on aggression and social bonding. On the one hand, on constant conflict and warfare, and on the other hand, on urbanization, the formation of cities, founded upon excess food production. And food production in itself relied on muscle power and gave men an edge over women, which they did not have in hunter-gatherer societies. Hunter-gatherer societies were almost totally egalitarian, while urban societies, and definitely industrialized societies, up to about 150 years ago, were totally male-dominated and male-oriented. Women were chattel, they were a kind of property, and a yielding property. And children were considered also an integral part of the workforce. The very concept of childhood is relatively new. It started with the Romanticism, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, for example. So it's about maybe 200 years old. Even authors like Dickens and Louisa May Alcott, when they wrote about children, when they incorporated children in their works, they don't refer to them as children. They refer to them as little women or little men. So the increase in testosterone, and we know that during the age of the patriarchy, until about 40 or 50 years ago, the levels of testosterone were much higher than they are today. What I'm saying is not only a metaphor. These are actual changes in the human body, in the production of specific hormones and specific neurotransmitters. Testosterone prepares people, prepares especially men, prepares them to conquer, to breed, to procreate, affect the production of sperm. So, for example, sperm counts in modern men are much lower, sometimes 70% lower than sperm counts in men only 50 or 60 years ago. And so, at the behavioral level, increasing testosterone is intimately linked to territorial conduct, territory, courtship, mating, all the foundations of the patriarchy, the family, marriage, land, inheritance and succession. So selfishness in the sense that there was clannishness. Everyone was in clans, and the interest of the family and the interest of your nearest and dearest were much more important than the interest of any collective. It was everyone was fending for themselves. There were no social safety nets or great societies or whatever. But pair bonding, as embodied in the family, as reified in the family, was a critical building block of the patriarchy. And in this sense, feminists are right when they castigate and cast families as essentially a male invention intended to somehow enslave women. But women, of course, traded off sexuality, sex. They traded off sex for protection and for provision. They made a trade-off. They kind of colluded with the men in creating the patriarchy. It's very misleading to pretend that women didn't want anything to do with the patriarchy and were sort of chain-ganged into it. It's nonsense. Women actively pursued the formation of the patriarchy and its maintenance. Women are the guardians of social mores and ethics and morality. Women are the gatekeepers. Had women not collaborated in the continued existence of the patriarchy, it would have collapsed exactly as it did in the last 50 years. Women now refuse to continue to collaborate with men. And so the patriarchy had crumbled to dust, in effect. So this was the age of testosterone. Testosterone is also responsible for monogamy, in-group living, in-group and out-group roles, cooperative tasks, and protection of territory. All familiar facets of human history until about the middle of the 20th century. Then, starting 150 years ago, there was a new social and literary and artistic movement known as Romanticism. Romanticism inexorably led to the rise of feminism. Why? Because Romanticism postulated, even if only in a latent way, but postulated a kind of equality between the genders. Men and women collaborated in love. You can't love your unequal. You can love only your equal. So men and women collaborated in love. Men and women became soulmates. They were supposed to have some kind of telepathic access to each other's minds. And they merged and fused. This merger and fusion, fostered and engendered and encouraged and broadcast by Romanticism, had equated, ipso facto, had equated men and women, made them one unique gender. Started with Romanticism, actually. Now, feminism was the inevitable outcome of Romanticism. And this whole age could be easily called the oxytocin age. Oxytocin is a peptide hormone. It's a neuropeptide. It's usually produced in the brain, but we have discovered recently that oxytocin is produced in numerous locations in the body. Now, oxytocin is crucial for social bonding, reproduction, childbirth, the period after childbirth, like breastfeeding, but also sexual activity, and especially orgasm. Oxytocin is also released during labor. Oxytocin is about love. It's the age of love. Romanticism was the age of love, exalting love, elevating love, idolizing love, the perfect love, the blemishless and flawless love, the two souls who had found each other across the ocean and against all odds. It was a narrative that was captivating and was carried on later by the likes of Hollywood. And to this very day, we are embedded in romantic notions because, for example, we seek love and romantic affiliation and sex is the foundation of our long-term committed relationship, which would have been unthinkable before the 19th century. Until the 19th century, marriage and committed relationships, not only marriage, by the way, your alternative lifestyle, but any committed relationship until the 19th century was based strictly and purely on interest, the confluence and matching of interests, adjacent land plots, your income, my income, common property, transferring wealth to the next generations is totally transactional. Sex was outsourced. Men went to prostitutes, women had lovers. So, combining the two, sex and love, within a committed relationship is a totally new invention. It's a romantic invention, and it is based on the hormone oxytocin. So oxytocin has to do with all the elements and the aspects of having or running family. Family became the foundation of family-like structure. When people came up with the idea of the nation state in the 19th century, they regarded it as an extension of the family. National economies were considered an inflated version of family budgets. Bismarck, who was the Iron Chancellor of Germany, introduced social safety networks, pension schemes, and other social security programs. Why? Because the nation state was supposed to be a family. It was supposed to take care of it. So oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It's a hormone that puts people together in order to generate new life and to protect life, to protect progeny, and the nation state by extension. These are the two roads of the nation state. Many functions of the family were outsourced to the nation state. For example, education became an outsourced thing. You sent your child to a school. You didn't educate your child at home. So you sent the child to a school. Even very intimate functions were outsourced. Work was outsourced until the inception of the Industrial Revolution. Work and family were one. Families were work units. Everyone in the family, including children, worked from dawn to dusk. And so the family was hollowed out, and the nation state took over many of its functions, but they coexisted. And all these structures were founded and established on bonding. They emanated from bonding. Now, when we look at oxytocin, one of the main roles is sexual. Oxytocin, for example, induces erection and ejaculation, sperm release. Human sexual response, oxytocin levels rise in plasma during sexual stimulation and orgasm. Oxytocin released into the brain of the female is important for pair bonding with her sexual partner. And yes, it happens also in one-night stands, which is why there's no such thing as casual sex. It's total myth. It's nonsense, as anyone who has had casual sex will tell you, even if they deny it. So oxytocin is responsible for maternal behavior, for in-group bonding, for out-group conflict. Because if you bond in-group, there's, by definition, people who are out-group. But oxytocin is also very crucial when it comes to empathy. We can induce heightened states of empathy just by spraying nasally oxytocin. So oxytocin has to do with all socially lubricated behaviors, and that includes, by the way, lying and dishonesty, because lying and dishonesty lubricate day-to-day social interactions. If we were totally honest with each other, we would be doomed. We would be fighting all the time. Oxytocin helps us with this. And so it is strongly correlated, oxytocin, with associating with members of your own group and conflicting with others. So oxytocin seamlessly took over testosterone, and indeed, in the past few decades, testosterone levels have declined dramatically, together with sperm count, but there had been a notable increase in the production of oxytocin. In-group dynamics became crucial. People placed enormous value on pair bonding, couples, families, committed relationships, nation states, and so on. In other words, people placed a premium on belonging. They began to associate emotions with group affiliation. The group could be another person in a committed relationship, and the group could be your country. But there was an association was being formed between emotions and belonging, emotions and acceptance. Oxytocin is a pro-social hormone. It facilitates trust and attachment between individuals, enhances social behavior. Oxytocin also modulates fear and anxiety. It does not elicit fear and anxiety like testosterone, but it modulates. It seems to kind of regulate behaviors of approach avoidance, but only in social context. It increases the salience of certain social stimuli. So again, it's a regulator of social behavior. It reduces fear. We know that when we administer oxytocin, fear is reduced. It inhibits probably the amygdala, although we're not sure quite yet. On the other hand, it increases emotions like envy and schadenfreude, glee at someone else's misfortune. Envy is a major driver of capitalism. It is not an accident that capitalism emerged. Proto-capitalism was already evident in the 13th and 14th century, but capitalism in its modern rapacious form, the jungle capitalism, had emerged only recently, and it's not an accident that it had emerged in the age of oxytocin, because these emotions of envy and so on, relative positioning, that is now all the rage in social media, these are mediated via oxytocin. There's a contagion element in oxytocin. Oxytocin increases the salience and the prevalence of cues, social cues, that imply some kind of contamination. These cues are critical to survival. Oxytocin is about survival in groups. In this sense, oxytocin is a collectivist hormone, unlike testosterone, which is essentially everyone for himself. So, this was the second age of civilization, the age that we are just emerging from. The reason we all feel so disoriented, dislocated, depressed, and anxious is because we are in a major transition period between one age and another. The age of oxytocin to the age of dopamine. Testosterone, by the way, suppresses oxytocin. They fight each other. So the transition to oxytocin had to win the reduction in testosterone. So oxytocin affects generosity, it affects trust, as I said, it affects romantic attachment, it affects group serving, dishonesty and deception, it affects social distance between people, it creates romantic affections, and monogamous pair bonding. Social behavior and wound healing are actually mediated by oxytocin. So it's a very metaphorical thing. Wounds in the body heal because of oxytocin. It's a healer. It's a healer hormone. Testosterone was aggressive, in your face, a bit psychopathic hormone, which allowed humanity to emerge and from the agricultural age and to create cities, to transition to the age of urbanization, and to be very territorial and conquer and fight. Colonialism may have been the last example of the testosterone age. And then the oxytocin age reversed all this. It placed emphasis on the collective. No wonder, up until the 1930s or 1940s, all the major social movements in the world were collectivist movements. Nazism, fascism, communism. They were all collectivist movements. Even in the United States, there was a socialist agenda at work under FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And then, 50 or 60 years ago, the trend that had started with Romanticism and culminated with feminism had reached a crescendo. And they had reached a crescendo because of advances in medicine, for example, contraception, and because of advances in technology. Both medicine and technology self-empowered. They were empowerment technologies. So people became empowered, and they became self-sufficient. For the first time in human history, people did not need each other that much. And so the rise of contraception allowed women, for example, to engage in riskless sex. The rise in social media and similar technologies, the internet, allowed people in general to produce, for example, books, movies, to order things. So they became, each person, each household became a hub of consumption, global consumption, and self-sufficiency. You could entertain yourself, you can even have sex via the internet. So the rise of these technologies pushed humanity inexorably into the third age. The third age is the age of dopamine. It's a hedonistic age. It's a narcissistic age. It's a self-centered age. And it's psychopathic in the bad sense of the word. Because the psychopathy of the testosterone age was centered around the family unit, the clan, the tribe. So the selfishness, the egotism of the testosterone age was harnessed and channeled into collective aims. So people created cities, dynasties, but still everything was done collectively. The selfishness of the testosterone age was communal and procedural.
These guys sucked. They were lying old.
The hedonism and selfishness of the dopamine age are atomized. They are solipsistic. They are individualistic. The very concept of individual and self. These are totally new concepts. This concept would not have been recognized only individual, divided from society. Self as opposed to others. The self and other. The other. There's a lot of alienation, a lot of separation, a lot of self-containment, self-sufficiency. I don't need you, go away. The dopamine age, which we had just entered about 50 or 60 years ago, started in the 1960s. The dopamine age is an age where we drift away from each other. We find it increasingly more difficult to collaborate on common goals and common aims. We disagree on agendas. We have partisanship, tribal thinking, and they translate into aggression. The dopamine age relies, of course, on dopamine. Dopamine, as opposed to the previous two, is a neurotransmitter. It's not a hormone. It is made in the body. The nervous system uses dopamine to send messages between nerve cells. It's a chemical messenger. Dopamine is about pleasure, almost exclusively. It's a big part of our unique ability to think and plan, but think and plan within a reward system. So the dopamine is a reward chemical. Whatever you do or through dopamine,
the bull center torque is so good.
In order to derive pleasure, it's like what Freud called it, the pleasure principle. Dopamine helps you strive, focus, find things interesting. When you're interested in something, you release dopamine. It's all about pleasure. Coke, increases dopamine in the brain. It satisfies the natural reward system, big time. But the problem with dopamine is, the more you're exposed to it, the more you develop tolerance. In other words, you need increasing doses of dopamine to take you to the same point of pleasure or to a high. That's why you need to consume more and more coke in order to reach the same level of high. And this leads to emotional lows when the dopamine hit is over. So dopamine rush or dopamine hits are, cut a long story short, addictive. And because the brain itself releases dopamine, we have an inbuilt addictive system, addiction, within our minds. And it is extremely dangerous to play with this. And what we've been doing in the past 50, 60 years, with casual sex, with social media, with entertainment, mass entertainment, what we've been doing, we've been screwing around with the dopamine system in our brains. We've been creating addictions, artificially induced addictions, which would be very near impossible to reverse, and which will have devastating consequences on the level of the species itself. Yes, I think this is an existential threat to the species. I even consider it much bigger than climate change. We feel pleasure when we do certain things, like, for example, sex. We feel pleasure when we accomplish something. We feel pleasure when we consume certain substances. Sexual stimulation produces dopamine. We feel enjoyment. We feel joy. We feel cheer. But dopamine is released when we eat delicious food, when we learn something new, when we listen to music, when we gamble. As I said, when we take drugs. Dopamine can lead you into very bad ways. Take, for example, social media. And I've been sounding the alarm on social media for many years. I refer you to my interviews with Richard Bannon. So social media, dopamine, as I said, is a naturally occurring feel-good chemical. It triggers our inner reward system. Social media mimics human connection. Social media prompts dopamine release. When we get a like, dopamine hit. When we get a favorable comment, dopamine hit. When we get views on YouTube, dopamine hit.
Oh my god, I
We are
thought I
constantly
did the other
exposed
one.
to dopamine rushes and dopamine hits. When we have sex, especially by the way, casual sex, dopamine hit. When we have regular sex within relationships, oxytocin hit. So casual sex is a dopamine release activity that creates definitely an addiction. Anyone who had experienced casual sex will tell you that despite the fact that casual sex is extremely bad quality, it's difficult to extricate yourself. It's difficult to transition to committed relationships. And this is the mild case. Drugs, of course, very difficult to get rid of. It's a habit that's difficult to get rid of. In other words, dopamine habituates and it creates tolerance, exactly like alcohol. Beautiful images of other people with minimal effort. They create dopamine hits. They create a dopamine rush. It's the equivalent of a real-life interaction. It's a drug. It's addictive. It creates conditioning. It's an intense pleasure response. It's exciting, and it's the same kind of reinforcement that you get when you win in a casino, when you win money in a casino or in the lottery. And so we are gambling on this outcome. There's a critic of social media by the name of Lemke, L-E-M-B-K. I recommend that you watch some of her work. She says that we had entered dopamine deficit age. We constantly crave dopamine because we experience less pleasure when we are not using the kind of activity or drug that create dopamine surges. And this drug is, in her mind, is social media. She says, the problem with things that release a lot of dopamine all at once is that our brains have to compensate. But this is really the key point. Our brains don't just then bring our dopamine firing back to baseline level. The brain actually pushes dopamine levels below the baseline. We go into a dopamine deficit state. That's the way the brain restores homeostasis. If there's a huge deviation upward, then there's going to be a deviation downward. That's essentially the come down. That moment of wanting to stay online, to click on one more video, to connect with one more person, and I would add to take one more shot, or to sleep with one more stranger. Dopamine deficit state, says Lemke, you know that you are in this state when you scroll through social media and you feel that you cannot stop. It doesn't necessarily feel good. You are not getting anything from your actions, but you can't stop. You just keep scrolling. In a dopamine deficit, she says, it can feel similar to depression and anxiety, and indeed, rates of depression and anxiety among social media users are much higher than among non-users. Same with casual sex. Casual sex has been associated with depression and anxiety, especially among women. Social media, therefore, casual sex, food addictions, any other types, they all have impacts on mental health. And we are living in an age that fosters and encourages addiction because there's a lot of money in it. Addictions have become cottage industries. So this is the age of dopamine, the age of addiction. Some people are more susceptible to addiction. They are dependent. They have dependent personalities, or what is colloquially known as addictive personalities. The brain is changing. Whenever the brain is exposed to dopamine, repeated hits of dopamine, the brain changes. It's been proven in studies. There's neuroplasticity of the brain is reactive to abuse, but it also reactive to pleasure. There's very little effort now required in getting a dopamine reward. You go online, you watch pornography. You go online, your social media, you watch something on YouTube, you got your dopamine. The reward threshold in our brain is changing. So this age, this third age of civilization, the age of hedonism, the age of atomization, the age of narcissism, and the age of reward, constant reward, which creates entitlement. This is the age that we had entered. It would make it impossible for us to coordinate our efforts as a species, even if these efforts are focused on survival. Look how difficult, how impossible it is for us to agree on a common agenda regarding COVID-19, to agree on common efforts regarding climate change. These are existential threats, and yet we can't get our act together. And we can't get our act together because we're all dopamine addicts. And we have entered the third age of civilization, the age of dopamine.
Oh my god, I'm so rich, dude. I'm about to be paid. Crazy how much money I make. That army's been there for at least 10 turns.
Get on your knees. If you find Texas.
That's pretty good. We're going to equip raw materials minus 10% off provinces.
Endrin Kuli Skunda. Sorozul Amgutsen, Shardis Agnolit bin Ekuzankal.
Okay, Bonbonim. The cold therapy seminar in Drobeta Turno Severin in Romania was a very unusual experience for me. People there bonded. They formed communities. They ate together. They cruised the city together. They bought things together. I was very gratified to see the effect of this togetherness on everyone around. And one of them, I still don't know who, by the way, left me a present. Actually, quite a few of them left me presents, for which I'm very grateful. I thank you very much. But one of them left me a present which I would like to discuss today. And this is the present. It's a book published in 2004, and it is titled, intriguingly, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. Nothing good can happen on a Monday, except a new YouTube by the inimitable, the one and only one, thank God for that, Sam Vaknin. C'est moi. My name is Sam Vaknin, and I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. I'm also a former visiting professor of psychology. Today we're going to discuss morality and its place in psychology and in the relationship between victims and abusers. Is there any place to talk about ethics, about proper conduct, about good versus evil? Is this about morality? Or is this about naked Darwinian power? Is it about the survival of the fittest? Or have we, as a society and as individuals, have we transcended this view of reality and entered a more refined space where people are empathic and considerate and sensitive and generally woke? You know my view. I'm not going to disappoint you in this video, but I'm going to introduce you to many, many new concepts and a lot of research, as I always do. Stay with me. And so I've received a comment by Claudine James on one of my videos, and it says, this moral manipulation is alien and crazy-making. Narcissist has deep need to debase others to be able to perch on the moral hilltop, ? Or is it cowardice to just say the relationship is over, directly, wherein he is the victim, humiliated and rejected again to himself? So, this raises quite a few issues, and many of them have been tackled in previous videos, but the one new element in this comment is the topic of morality. You see, psychology attempts to stand out from philosophy and from religion, and to pose as a rigorous, almost exact and vigorous science. It's derisory, it's funny, it's comic. Psychology will never be a science. At best, it's a pseudoscience. But in its attempt to become the new physics of the soul, the new mechanics of the psyche, psychology has rejected morality and value judgments, and they're nowhere to be found in psychological theories and practices, which is a huge shame, because narcissistic abuse, for example, shatters our belief in a just world, in a just universe. And in this sense, narcissistic abuse is first and foremost a moral calamity. I want to read to you a speech. It was given by Heinrich Himmler. Heinrich, Loyal Heine, the Loyal Heine, as Hitler called him, has never been known for his morality. But listen to his speech and the amazing and pernicious ways in which he cast himself and the murderous SS, the Totenkopf, as the moral agents and the Jews, perishing in the Holocaust, asphyxiated with Cyclone B gas and then cremated. The Jews, the victims, are the true moral scourge. They are the true enemies. They are the true perpetrators. The poor SS has to deal with the aftermath of the Jewish evil. Listen well how a psychopathic narcissist for that matter, recasts the victim's role and himself as the abuser, as the victim. Himmler's speech was given to senior SS officers in Poznan, Poland, October 4, 1943, and he dealt with the evacuation of the Jews. And here's what Heinrich Himmler had to say. I also want to speak to you here, he said, in complete frankness, of a really grave chapter. Among ourselves, for once, it shall be said quite openly. But all the same, we will never speak about it in public. Just as we did not hesitate on June 30th, 1934, to do our duty as we were ordered, to stand comrades who had erred against the wall and shoot them. And we never spoke about it, and we never will speak about it. It was a matter of natural tact that is alive in us, thank God, that we never talked about it among ourselves, that we never discussed it. Each of us shuddered, and yet each of us knew clearly that the next time he would do it again if it were an order and if it were necessary. I'm referring here to the evacuation of the Jews, the extermination of the Jewish people. This is one of the things that is easily said. The Jewish people are going to be exterminated. That's what every party member says. Sure, it's our program, elimination of the Jews, extermination, it will be done. And then they all come along, the 80 million worthy Germans, and each one has his one decent Jew. Of course, the others swine, but this Jew, is a first-rate Jew. Of all those who talk like that, not one has seen it happen. Not one has had to go through it. Most of you men, says Himmler to his SS followers, most of you men know what it is like to see 100 corpses side by side, or 500, or 1,000, to have stood fast through this, and except for cases of human weakness, to have stayed decent. That has made us hard. This is an unwritten, and never to be written, page of glory in our history, for we know how difficult it would be for us if today, after bombing raids and hardships and deprivations of war, if we were still to have the Jews in every city as secret saboteurs, agitators, and inciters. If the Jews were still lodged in the body of the German nation, we would probably by now have reached the stage of 1916, 1917. The wealth the Jews possess, we took from them. I gave a strict order, said Himmler, which has been carried out by SS Obergruppenführer Paul, that this wealth will of course be turned over to Reich in its entirety. We have taken none of it for ourselves. Individuals who have erred will be punished in accordance with the order given by me at the start, threatening that anyone who takes as much as a single mark of this money is a dead man. A number of SS men, not very many, committed this offense, and they shall die. There will be no mercy. We had the moral right. We had the duty towards our people to destroy these people that wanted to destroy us. But we do not have the right. We do not have the moral right to enrich ourselves by so much as a fur, a watch, one mark, or a cigarette, or anything else. We do not want in the end, because we destroyed the bacillus, to be infected by these bacillus and to die. I will never stand by and watch while even a small rotten spot develops or takes hold. Whatever and wherever it may form, we will together burn it away. All in all, however, we can say that we have carried out this most difficult of tasks in spirit of love for our people, and we have suffered no harm to our inner being, our soul, and our character. Heinrich Himmler wasn't aware that his speech presaged the concept in psychology known as moral injury. Now, many self-styled experts, of course, misunderstand and misconstrue moral injury. Moral injury is experienced not by victims, but by perpetrators. When a perpetrator behaves in a way that conflicts with his or her values, with his or her morality, conscience, etc., we have a moral injury. It's an injury to an individual's moral conscience and values resulting from an act perceived as a moral transgression on the part of themselves. Now, sometimes witnessing such an act can also invoke or provoke moral injury, but in very few cases does the victim suffer moral injury. Moral injury produces profound feelings of guilt and shame, moral disorientation, societal alienation, a sense of betrayal, a sense of anger. There are psychological, social, cultural, spiritual aspects of moral injury, and in this sense, moral injury is a form of trauma. The US Department of Veterans Affairs uses the concept of moral injury in its literature, and it says the following: the mental health of military veterans who have witnessed or perpetrated an act in combat that transgressed their deeply held moral beliefs and expectations can result in moral injury. So moral injury is almost exclusively reserved for someone who did something really, really wrong, and he knows it. Someone who misbehaved, someone who transgressed, someone who violated the most basic ethical precepts. This kind of person is liable to suffer from moral injury if he is possessed of values, moral compass, and a conscience to start with. Moral injury was first described in 1984, and then it was called moral distress. It was a philosopher, his name was Andrew Jameson, and he wrote about nursing. He described ethical dilemmas in nursing, and he said that these ethical dilemmas create, and I quote, moral distress arises when one knows the right thing to do, but institutional constraints make it nearly impossible to pursue the right course of action. The term moral injury was coined by Jonathan Shea. Go down to the description is under the video, not over the video. Go down to the description and you will find 2 articles by psychiatrist Jonathan Shea and his colleagues. He focused mostly on military veterans, and he interrogated them, asked them about the sense of injustice, leadership malpractice, ethical dilemmas they've encountered, and how they solved them. And he defined moral injury as containing or comprised of 3 components. He said, moral injury is present when 1, there has been a betrayal of what is morally right, 2, by someone who holds legitimate authority, and 3, in a high-stakes situation. find moral injury stemming from the betrayal of what's right in a high-stakes situation by someone who holds power. Now today, we don't adhere to this definition. We have enlarged it considerably. The credit goes to Rick Litz, L-I-T-Z. Again, go to the description, you will see some of the articles. In 2009, the term moral injury was modified, and Litz and colleagues defined it this way. Moral injury is perpetrating, failing to prevent, or bearing witness to acts that transgress deeply held moral beliefs and expectations. It may be deleterious in the long term, emotionally, psychologically, behaviorally, spiritually, and socially. So now the definition is much wider. It doesn't apply only to the military, law enforcement, and the healthcare industries. Now, anyone and everyone can suffer moral injury. But again, it's limited to perpetrators. Perpetrator guilt, a phenomenon I will discuss in a few minutes, underlies moral injury. If you experience moral injury, it's because you have done something seriously wrong, in breach of everything that is held dear, morally and ethically, by everyone, yourself included. Your conscience is torturing you for good reason. Your suffering is purifying, purging, cleansing. It's a baptism by fire, a very healing experience. According to Litz, the term moral injury has been developed in response to the inadequacy of other mental health diagnoses, such as post-traumatic stress disorder. Litz and others said that PTSD doesn't capture the anguish, the self-torture, the torment, the inner disintegration, the knowing feeling of being possessed or bedeviled by voices, powerful introjects that are the equivalent of a harsh inner critic, or they say sadistic superego, but with a correct, right, justified message. So, PTSD focuses on symptoms. Moral injury focuses on the reactions to these symptoms, in terms of shame, guilt, anger, a sense of betrayal, and disgust. When people experience moral injury, the first thing is shame. They feel ashamed of themselves, because they haven't measured up to their own standards, because they have failed, first and foremost, themselves. The path from PTSD to moral injury is two-way. You could first suffer moral injury, which later develops into PTSD. In short, moral injury is a form of self-traumatizing and then self-re-traumatizing. The introjects inside you are so powerful and so right that you can't offer any resistance and any meaningful defense, and you essentially internally decompensate. Acting out is just one step removed. Acting out could be in the form of psychosis, all-consuming psychosis, or doing something really crazy, really criminal, really illegal, something that's bound to get you into serious trouble. Let's focus on the cognitive, behavioral, and emotional aspects of moral injury, and he said that the cognitive dissonance occurs after a perceived moral transgression results in a stable internal global attribution of blame, followed by the experience of shame, guilt, anxiety, and withdrawal or avoidance. There's an increased risk of suicide owing to demoralization, self-harming, and self-handicapping behavior. So, according to this, the sequence is cognitive dissonance, no, moral transgression, perceived as moral transgression by the individual, then cognitive dissonance, then stable self-attribution of blame, shame, guilt, anxiety, negative affectivity, and dependent negative moods and negative effects and negative and anxiety. So this is the next stage. Then withdrawal and avoidance, which is a very bad sign. It's extremely bad sign, because in the vast majority of cases, it's followed by suicidal ideation, demoralization, severe attempts at self-harm, and self-handicap, and self-defeat, and ultimately self-destruct. There are psychological risk factors that predispose individuals to moral injury, and they include neuroticism, being prone to shame, and there are other factors that protect individuals from moral injury. For example, high self-esteem, of course, grandiosity, support, people around the individual, who forgive the individual, and offer the individual helping hand, holding hand. And above all, number one, is a belief the world is just, believe in the just world hypothesis. We'll come to it a bit later in this video. Now there's an anthropologist, Tina Molenbeek, and she integrated insights from psychology, philosophy, theology, social sciences, and so on and so forth, and she offers the most holistic understanding of moral injury. She dwells on ethics, psychology, spiritual, existential dimensions, organizational, political, societal, etc. So anyone interested to learn more about moral injury, Tina Molenbeek is your girl. The research of Molenbeek showed that unresolved conflicts create potentially morally injurious issues. The unresolved conflicts would be on the political level. For example, disagreements about whether a war is just or not. The Iraq War, the Ukraine War. When there's a disagreement as to the ethical dimension of the war, is it a just war, not only in terms of international law, but in terms of ethics. In this case, soldiers on the ground are fighting a war, but do not experience total approval and total support. And so they experience institutional betrayal, and they're looking for reparation. In other words, they begin to develop compensatory behavior. Some of these compensatory behaviors can be entitled and grandiose. In other words, moral injury can provoke narcissistic defenses and even psychopathic behavior. And this is why it's very difficult to tell, sometimes, people who are actual, real narcissists and psychopaths from people who have become transitional narcissists and psychopaths owing to a single mistake, a single transgression, having done something wrong, having erred, having made a faux pas, having misbehaved, and then regretted bitterly, and so on. So the sequence in this case is the individual misbehaves, commits a moral, ethical transgression, even a crime. Then the individual feels bad about it because it conflicts with the individual's values and conscience, moral compass. The individual feels bad. It's a moral injury. Then there is a sense of betrayal if the transgression is embedded in a bigger picture, for example, a war, a natural disaster, a crash, an accident, and so forth. So then there's a sense of betrayal. And then there are compensatory behaviors, compensatory mechanisms, often involving high narcissism, grandiosity, and entitlement. Public condemnation, public exposure of the individual can create the equivalent of mortification, even in healthy people. But here is something very interesting. If the individual perceives himself to have acted wrongly, and then he is made into a hero, he is celebrated, he is feted, he is subjected to a confetti parade, that would create moral injury. So moral injury is any public exposure following a misdeed, following misconduct. And the public exposure can be negative, but can also be positive. The public eye, the big all-seeing eye that used to symbolize God in medieval churches, this eye of the public follows you everywhere. And if you know that you have misbehaved, no matter how forcefully and how often you protest to yourself and in public and to others, you know that you have misbehaved. You know how badly you have misbehaved. You know how egregiously you've breached every moral tenet and every ethical precept. And you know there's no way out of this knowledge. And so any attention to you, even positive attention, is likely to actually engender and inflame your moral injury. Now, if you are embedded in a social network that is supportive and provides support, and I'm thinking is behind you, that is going to ameliorate the intensity, extent and length, longevity of the moral injury. It's not going to prevent it. And if it continues into the process of moral injury, it's going to exacerbate. So in a way, moral injury is the opposite of narcissistic injury, but ironically, it is experienced as the same. It's a kind of mortification. And so the reactions are very much the same. There's a lot of soul searching, a lot of self-tormenting, a lot of tears and gnashing of teeth, and an attempt to flee yourself, to kind of put a stop to it, to throw on the kill switch, no pun intended. So, any distortion of the original experience by the public is perceived as enhancing, amplifying, magnifying the moral injury, because it brings to light, it highlights the injustice, the unjust way in which the individual had comported himself or herself. In 2019, researchers found out that there's a list of events that distress civilians at a level consistent with moral injury, including a car accident or experiencing sexual assault, provoked sexual assault in many ways, and so on and so forth. But not everyone reacts the same way. The preconditions that I mentioned must exist for a moral injury to manifest. Moral injury explains a panoply of behaviors, including, for example, resignation, leaving a job. That's work by Ludwig Astragoth. And so I encourage you to go into the literature. It's pretty fascinating. And definitely, there is a very strong connection between moral injury and complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, especially with an element of complex post-traumatic stress disorder known as disturbances in self-organization. Moral injury is not so much linked to other aspects of CPTSD, but it is deeply linked to emotional dysregulation, interpersonal difficulties, negative self-concepts, a sense of worthlessness, of failure, guilt and shame. In short, moral injury triggers the bad object. So it renders CPTSD much worse, or even brings on CPTSD. Now I mentioned earlier that one of the defenses against moral injury is the just world hypothesis. Now we have something called primal world beliefs, or primals. Primal world beliefs in psychology are basic beliefs that humans hold about the general character of the world. Clinically speaking, primal world beliefs are part of what is known as the internal working model. Okay. Jeremy Clifton and his colleagues at the University of Pennsylvania coined this phrase, primals or primal world beliefs, between 2014 and 2019. And they did a lot of amazing work and so on and so forth, and they isolated 26 primal world beliefs that people hold, that they hold. And these are preconditions for existence, not only for happiness or contentment, but for functioning. You can't function well if you don't hold some of these beliefs. And they include the beliefs that the world is safe, enticing, alive, that the world in short is a good place, is good, is just, and not dangerous. Of course, the opposite of this is that the world is capricious, arbitrary, hostile, dangerous, and so on and so forth. The just world belief is the belief that there is karma. The world is a karmic place. Outcomes are typically earned and deserved. And each primal is modeled as a kind of variable in operation within this just world. Now, what is the just world hypothesis, and how does it constitute a defense against moral injury? There's a book called Everything Happens for a Reason. Don't ask. But it encapsulates this belief. And there are all these sentences, you know, you got what was coming to you, what goes around comes around, chickens come home to roost, everything happens for a reason, and you reap what you sow. You know these sentences? They're all about the just world hypothesis, or more precisely, more accurately, the just world fallacy. It's a cognitive bias. It assumes that the world is organized in a way that justice is inbuilt. It's a hardwired feature. It's meted out to people. People get what they deserve. Their actions will have morally fair and fitting consequences. Actors and agents will get paid handsomely for their good deeds, and even more handsomely for their bad deeds. Nothing will go unpunished, and nothing will go unrewarded. Assumptions that noble actions eventually will be rewarded, and evil actions will be punished. That's a part of this hypothesis. Now, it's a tendency to attribute consequences, or to expect consequences, to a universal force, in a way. So it's kind of a proxy for belief in God. It's a supreme power that restores a moral balance, a universal connection between the nature of actions and their results. Of course, this is completely illogical and irrational. I mean, consider, for example, the following question. Who decides what is good and what is evil? Any action is good in certain contexts and evil in other contexts. I can give you like a million examples. So forget all this. It's not a very rigorous, philosophically rigorous notion or concept, but it implies the existence of a cosmic justice, destiny, divine providence, desert, stability, order, karma. It's kind of rationalizing suffering on the grounds that sufferers deserve it. Now, many social psychologists study the just world hypothesis, and number one among them is Melvin Lerner. Melvin Lerner started his work in the 1960s, and he's definitely the grandfather, the father, and the mother of the field. He studied beliefs about justice, and he inquired into negative societal and social interactions. He was trying to understand experiments by Stanley Milgram. Stanley Milgram studied obedience. Lerner wanted to answer the question, how come political regimes that cause cruelty and suffering, continue to maintain popular support? How do people come to accept social norms and social laws and mores that produce misery and hurt? it flies in the face of logic, I mean, and basic assumptions about human nature. How does this happen? So Lerner came up with an answer. He said, because we tend to blame victims for their suffering. That's why. We don't think the victims don't deserve what they're getting. We believe victims deserve to suffer. And so then the regime, which inflicts suffering on victims, becomes an instrument of God, an agent of order and structure and justice, a positive thing. Such a regime is perceived as a positive thing. Going back to Heinrich Himmler, he said to his subordinates, the SS officers present, he said to them, you're good people, because you're punishing the deserving. The Jews are our enemy. They want to destroy us, and you're punishing them. That makes you good people. And so Lerner theorized that there was a prevalent belief in a just world in which actions and conditions have predictable, appropriate consequences. And the actions and conditions are associated closely with specific behaviors or attributes. So this means that society determines the norms of society, the values of society, the ideologies that rule society, govern society. They determine, first and foremost, what is right and what is wrong. They determine what is just and what is unjust, what is appropriate, what is inappropriate. And then they tell you how to behave. Althusser called it interpolation. Society tells you how to behave and what traits and attributes of yourself you should emphasize. They're positive and others are negative. You should suppress them or repress them. Lerner said that believing in a just world is a functional thing. It maintains the idea that one can influence the world in a predictable way. All you have to do is be good. All you have to do is work hard. All you have to do is conform, and then nothing bad will happen to you. It's a kind of contract with the world regarding the consequences of your choices, decisions, and behaviors. If I follow what you're saying to the world, what you're saying to society, what you're saying to your government, what you're saying to other people, what you're saying to your spouse and to your children and to your bosses and to your neighbors and what you say, your church, what you're saying is, if I agree to follow your prescriptions, behavioral prescriptions, if I agree to suppress my antisocial and asocial traits, would you then guarantee that I will never be punished? And the answer resoundingly is a counterfactual. Yes, counterfactual, because this is nonsense. There's no such contract in reality. No one guarantees anything to anyone, ever. Bad things happen to good people. There's a book by that. But people pretend. They lie to themselves. So they plan for the future and they engage in effective goal-driven behavior. Those of you who want to delve deeper, there's a kind of a booklet or monograph or whatever you want to call it, published Belief in a Just World, a fundamental delusion. That says everything there is. Belief in a just world, said Lerner, is not about the world. It's about the believers. The believers want to feel good. The belief in a just world maintains the believer's well-being. People are confronted daily with evidence the world is not just. Many people suffer for no apparent cause, as the Holocaust. And yet, we continue to lie to ourselves. And we use strategies to eliminate information that threatens this belief. Rational or irrational strategies. For example, we accept the reality of some injustice. We say, well, mostly the world is just. Of course, there are mistakes, glitches, and bugs in the software, and sometimes the world is not just. Or we say, wherever there is injustice, we fight back. We're going to prevent injustice, or reverse injustice, or provide restitution. Or you say, this is the best I can do. I'm limited, and so on and so forth. These are all, or you deny the injustice, or you withdraw from the world, or you refrain the event. These are all defenses against the fact that the world is actually not just. You need to fit your experience of an unjust world, eminently unjust, overwhelmingly unjust world. You need to fit it into your expectation of a just, karmic world. You reinterpret the outcome, the cause, the character of everything, and that includes the victims. And here we come to the crucial point. To justify injustice in the world, the easiest method is to blame the victims, to shift the blame to the victims. If you cast the victims as the bad guys, then anything and everything that's happening to them, all their suffering, is justified. It's actually proof that the world is just. If you observe the injustice and suffering of an innocent person, one major way is to rearrange the cognition of an event, to interpret his victim as deserving of his suffering. Observers blame victims for their suffering. They try to find behaviors, a history, some mistakes they've made, their characteristics. Anti-Semitism is built entirely on this edifice. So these are negative social phenomena which are intended to resolve cognitive dissonances via derogating, devaluing, and degrading the victim. Another effect of this kind of thinking is that individuals experience less personal vulnerability because they do not believe they've done anything to deserve or to cause negative outcome. And this is a self-serving bias, which is very, very, very thinly separated from narcissism. In short, if you believe in a just world, and you believe that you're a good person, you are one step removed from becoming a narcissist. One step removed. So all these whining, self-styled victims, healers, rescuers, saviors, I'm always wrong, I always fall victim, I've never done anything bad to anyone, look what's happening to me, I never get along with a specific group of people, you name it, women, minorities, Jews, whatever. All these people are actually deep in the throes of malignant narcissism. They just camouflage, pretend to be the prey, when they've actually, long ago, become the predators. Watch my previous video about mimicry. Just world beliefs, they are forms of what we call causal attribution. In victim blaming, the causes of victimization are attributed to the individual rather than to the perpetrator or to the situation. So if you're victimized, it's because you attract abusers. You're a narcissist magnet. You are passive, you're just there, and bad things happen to you all the time. It's a form of superstition, delusional superstition. So the consequences of belief in a just world may be related to or explained in terms of causal attribution. You have it coming. You're a victim because you deserve to be a victim, because you have a victim mentality, you have victim behavior, and you attract abusers because you're not sufficiently careful, or you're too provocative, or you yourself, you're an abuser, just pretending to be a victim, etc., etc. Now, there have been many philosophical and psychological attempts in philosophy and psychology to rationalize victim blaming, enshrine it, and institutionalize. Consider, for example, veridical judgment. Veridical judgment is a suggestion that derogation effects are based on accurate judgments of the victim's character. In other words, if you think the victim has done something wrong or something to deserve his or her suffering, it's because you're right. They did or they are. It's beyond shocking that there is such a school in psychology. But veridical judgment, go and look it up for yourself. Lerner countered by saying that people are derogated, denigrated, debased, attacked, chastised, praised when they actually suffer. Individuals who agreed to undergo suffering but did not undergo suffering were viewed positively. So it's not about the victim, it's about the situation. And then there is another theory called guilt reduction. Guilt reduction is we humiliate the victims, we blame the victims, we criticize the victims, because we want to reduce our own feelings of guilt. Observers, the guilt reduction theory says that observers feel responsible or guilty for a victim's suffering if they themselves are involved in the situation or in an experiment, for example. In order to reduce the guilt, they devalue the victim. There isn't adequate evidence to support this appealing idea. Even observers who were not implicated in experiments and had no reason to feel guilty still were blaming and denigrating and humiliating victims. And there's another theory called discomfort reduction. It says that we blame victims as a way to alleviate discomfort after we view suffering. If the primary motivation is not to restore a belief in a just world, but to reduce discomfort caused by empathizing with victims. Blaming victims is not intended to suppress helping activity, but intended to suppress empathizing with the victim, because empathizing is really, really uncomfortable. These people assist the victims, they help them, but they don't empathize with them. According to Irving Staub, devaluing the victim leads to lesser compensation, if restoring belief in a just world was a primary motive. Instead, there's virtually no difference between compensation amounts, whether the compensation precedes or follows devaluation. So here we come to psychopathy. Psychopathy is a lack of just world-maintaining strategies. There are no emotions there, and there's no empathy, so there's no discomfort. There's no need to blame the victim. Things just are. There's no emotional reaction to the horrors and the suffering of other people. You just note them in passing, as you would note, for example, the weather. It's a complicated topic. We blame and derogate victims. This is well established in many studies. I refer you to studies by Zick Rubin, Letitia, Anne Peplau, and many others. And even victims of violence, illness, poverty, they are all somehow blamed for what's happened, for their suffering. The existence of a just world hypothesis, coupled with a very high self-esteem, is actually narcissism. Narcissism is a defense. Narcissism is a defense against moral injury. Because narcissism assumes that nothing in principle is immoral. Victims deserve what's happening. They deserve what's coming. So we see two pathways here, two trajectories. Number one, a person starts off as a moral person, ethical person with a conscience, and then he does something really bad, and he feels guilt, experiences shame, ego dystonia. So there's moral injury. And to defend against the moral injury, such a person is likely to become highly narcissistic and even psychopathic. On the other end of the spectrum, a narcissist and a psychopath, they would almost never, or very rarely, experience moral injury. They may experience something which I call self-efficacy injury. Injury because they have failed. So it's equivalent to mortification or narcissistic injury, but never moral injury. Self-efficacy injury is a very interesting concept, which I will elaborate upon in future videos. What happens when these very people are victimized? The people who kept saying the victims deserve it, they had it coming, suddenly they're victims. It was a study by Dr. Ronnie Yamaguchi, and he found that victims often blame their own behavior, but not their own characteristics for their victimization. Blaming one's behavior is a way of reasserting control. If you say, I became a victim because I made a mistake, then you made it happen. It's the same way a narcissist copes with mortification. He says, I made it happen. When you say, I made it happen, my behavior caused my victimization, then you're in charge, you're the boss, you're in control. Dimensions of just world beliefs include a belief in an unjust world, a belief in immanent justice, a belief in ultimate justice, the hope for justice, and a belief in one's ability to reduce injustice. The belief in an unjust world simply means a recognition of the existence of injustice. But then all the others are there to render the observer, to render the individual in charge, in control. In short, these are narcissistic defenses. Okay. Sometimes people have different beliefs in the personal and the public domain. So they say, I believe in a just world for myself, personal just world, but I don't believe in a just world in general, for others. And these beliefs are on the line, separating from mental health and mental illness. But I will not go into it. That's a lot to wait. Okay, a belief in a just world in general is good. It's necessary for mental health. It's associated with greater life satisfaction, well-being, and less depressive effect. The problem starts when a belief in a just world conflicts with behavior which is unjust, abusive, criminal. In short, when a belief in a just world leads to victim blaming or to narcissistic behaviors or psychopathic behavior, then we transition from mental health to mental illness. Like everything else, a belief in a just world can be abused, is often abused by narcissists and psychopaths and so on. In itself, a belief in a just world is a coping strategy, a resource. It buffers stress associated with daily life, it reduces trauma and traumatic events. It's a positive illusion, positive adaptation. You could even say it's a form of defense mechanism, cognitive bias and protection. Similar to grandiosity, which is a cognitive distortion that protects the narcissist from narcissistic illusion. But it often degenerates into victim blaming and into entitled narcissism and into psychopathic behaviors. And that's where the problem starts. Okay. Another point which has to do with the belief in a just world is internal locus of control. When you believe in a just world, there is a greater acceptance and less dissatisfaction with negative events in one's life, and that helps you maintain an internal locus of control. This relationship holds only for beliefs in a just world for oneself. Belief in a just world for others is related to all kinds of social phenomena, some of which are negative, for example, victim blaming that I mentioned before. Okay, I mentioned perpetrator moral injury. It's also known as perpetrator trauma. Participation-induced traumatic stress hits. It occurs when symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder are caused by an act or acts which are considered morally reprehensible. It's very similar to moral injury, but it usually involves transgressions which produce more profound shame because they're more extreme. Now, trauma that is the outcome of misbehavior, trauma that is the outcome of criminal behavior, trauma that is the outcome of extreme misconduct is mentioned in the DSM-5. It says, when it defines PTSD, it says that there are cause-on factors for military personnel being a perpetrator, witnessing atrocities or killing the enemy. So there is a recognition that people carry out acts which conflict with their essence so extremely that they develop trauma consequently. Moral injury is like narcissistic injury, and moral trauma is like mortification, let's say. Moral injury and especially moral trauma produce a panoply of traumatic symptoms. Intrusive imagery, dreams, flashbacks, unwanted thoughts, explosive anger, concentration and memory problems, and sleep problems, hypervigilance, feeling of alienation, a sense of disintegration, and alcohol and cocaine use disorders. Alcohol and cocaine are by far the two substances most used in these cases, and dreams are affected, the contents of dreams. This results in cycles of violence, domestic violence, street crimes, emotional numbing, detachment, apathetic behavior, substance abuse I mentioned, and so on. All this mess is a part of a branch of psychology known as moral psychology. It's a field of study in philosophy and in psychology. And initially it was used to describe moral development, but today it refers more broadly to topics at the intersection of ethics, psychology, and philosophy of mind. Some of the main topics in moral psychology are moral judgment, moral reasoning, moral sensitivity, moral responsibility, moral motivation, moral identity, moral action, moral development, moral diversity, moral character, especially virtue ethics, altruism, psychological egoism, moral luck, moral forecasting, moral emotions, effective focusing, moral disagreement, and so on and so forth. It's a driving error, and I'm going to dedicate in the future several videos to the cognitive, mainly to the cognitive aspects of moral psychology. So, I hope you understood where victim blaming is coming from, and how ironically it's connected to morality and moral injury, and the attempts to compensate for moral injury by becoming an a-hole narcissist. Aside.
Nice. Oh man.
Kazak Bino Demars. Durum. Makardia Thalmansi. Sneak gets aggro.
Udio Grinas Elgrabu. Takuasta Elgrabus. Skadita. Thaumansia Nunku. De Baragarin. Gomleth. Doomleth. Never. Nazuna Gormanunku. Test me at your peril. Awamrag. Zegtathrom. Doomskullkey. Anga's lock. Anfa Agrimatu. Zibartu da Baraza Hasut. Dumthaumancy.
It's food.